Chapter 538. Evil soul masters represented those who didn't walk the right path and focused on absorbing other people's soul power to increase their strength. In the past 10 years, due to the suppression of the martial soul hall and the two empires, the number of evil soul masters in the mainland had decreased by a lot. Even if they still existed, they were either in some remote cities or hidden in the dark and wouldn't expose themselves. Now, as the Great Xia Alliance spread its branches across the entire continent, the living space of evil soul masters was further reduced, and there weren't many of them left. Previously, Lin Feng had captured a batch of them to experiment with his soul skills and man-made soul rings. The man-made soul rings weren't too bad and didn't cause many casualties. They were mainly used to experiment with soul skills. It was easy to make mistakes, and some people would go berserk while practicing. Hence, if Lin Feng wanted to experiment with a new project, he had to capture a new batch of evil soul masters. However, as there were very few evil soul masters and they were very well hidden, Lin Feng spent 3 days to capture a batch of evil soul masters. In the following time, Lin Feng started various experiments. As Lin Feng's theory was already very perfect before he started the experiments, there weren't any major problems during the experiments. There were a total of 3 research projects, the most important of which was to allow soul masters to break through quickly. Other than that, Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to increase the age of soul rings and evolve them. Just as Lin Feng was researching and breaking through quickly, the meeting in the God realm had reached its most important point. Previously, the sea god had briefly explained the current situation in Douluo, especially Thanos' strength. Suddenly, all the gods started a heated discussion. This is impossible. The power of the laws in Douluo is extremely strong. How can there be such a law-defying soul master? Yes, for so many years, no one has ever been able to break the rules. Could there be a mistake? After they became gods, they cultivated the power of the laws. It was also because of this that they knew how strong the laws were. Defying the laws was something that even gods like them couldn't do. Therefore, when they heard that someone from the lower realm could defy the rules, their first thought was disbelief. Even Poseidon was starting to doubt himself. Had Poseidon given him the wrong information? At this time, the divine kings looked at each other. Then, Raging Flame stood up and shouted, "Everyone calm down. Since there are differences in this matter, let's use the divine mirror in the committee to take a look first." The divine mirror was a very special instrument that could be used to observe the situation in the lower realm. One did not need to personally descend to the lower realm, which was very convenient. However, this thing consumed a lot of divine power, so it was usually not used. Yes, let's use the divine mirror first. Many people agreed. Just like that, under the lead of several god kings, the group of gods arrived at the hall of the God Realm Committee. This was where the divine mirror was located, and it was specifically used to observe the lower realms. At this moment, the 5 divine kings were standing around the divine mirror. After exchanging glances, they nodded at the same time and channeled their divine power into the divine mirror. In the next second, a dazzling light burst forth from the divine mirror. Soon, the light dissipated, and the situation of the world of Douluo appeared on it. This was a bird's-eye view from above. Poseidon immediately came to the side of the divine mirror and began to search. The Great Xia Empire that Thanos is in should have been established. The location should be in the Martial Spirit City, where the Martial Spirit Hall was originally located. As he spoke, the scenery on the divine mirror quickly changed, and the current appearance of the Great Xia City appeared. Is this the Great Xia Empire? It's so special. Yes, not only is the architectural style special, but everyone's face is filled with happy smiles. This empire is not simple. When the Great Xia City was built, Lin Feng added many elements of the country style to it. It was very different from the original buildings of the continent of Douluo. These gods had never seen such elements before, so they felt that it was very novel. Poseidon ignored the astonishment of the others and continued to flip through quickly, trying to find Thanos' figure. When Poseidon sent him a message, it was not purely through words, but through telepathy. This kind of communication could also transmit what they saw and heard, so Poseidon knew what Thanos looked like. He was dressed in white and wore a mask. However, he could not find Thanos' figure even after searching the entire Great Sea City. This made Poseidon frown slightly. Although the divine mirror was powerful and could spy on the situation in the lower realm, there was a limit to it. However, there were also great limitations. There was no way to accurately find a person. One had to search for them on their own. Now that he did not know where Thanos was, it would be troublesome. At this moment, the evil god King Ji-dong said, "Let me try and see if I can find him." Everyone present knew about Thanos' situation, and Ji-dong knew a secret technique to find people, so he wanted to try it. Okay, Poseidon nodded and quickly moved aside. Soon, Ji-dong stood in front of the divine mirror. Divine power gathered, and his eyes instantly turned red. In the next moment, his gaze seemed to see through the two worlds and turned into a beam of light that entered Douluo's world. At this moment, Lin Feng in Douluo's world was experimenting on evil soul masters. Suddenly, he frowned and felt it will descend from the unseen world, as if it was looking for him. There was no danger, but Lin Feng was very cautious. He immediately teleported and left his original spot, arriving in a forest. At the same time, the thousand trickery ruler in his hand turned into a thin film that covered his entire body. In this way, Lin Feng's soul power aura completely disappeared, and there was no possibility of him being discovered. However, this was not all. In the next second, Lin Feng's soul power surged, and he directly cut the surrounding space, hiding himself in the void. Some of the clones around him also retracted his spiritual power and directly turned them into inanimate objects. Lin Feng knew that there was no one in Douluo's world that could pose a threat to him, and it was even more impossible for someone to spy on him like this. Therefore, he knew in that instant that there was definitely a god who made a move. At this moment, his method of hiding in the void was not a decision that Lin Feng made in a hurry, but a plan that he had long prepared. After all, Douluo was the guardian of the angel god, and Bibi Dong was the successor of the Rakshasa god. Ever since he sealed the two of them, he was prepared to be targeted by a god. However, Lin Feng also knew that the flow of time in the god realm and Douluo's world was different. A day in the god realm was a year in the lower realm. He estimated that it would take at least half a year for the angel god and the Rakshasa god to react and deal with him. He did not expect that in less than half a month's time, they would make a move. This made Lin Feng a little surprised. In fact, Lin Feng did not know that the Douluo's world was the most important world in the god realm's management, and that many gods originated from the Douluo's world. Therefore, in an extremely short period of time, they reacted. And most importantly, if Thanos' strength was not so heaven-defying that it even went against the rules, the god realm would not have paid so much attention to him, and would not have used the divine mirror. And in the case of the angel god and the others' independent investigation, it might really take half a year before they could focus on Lin Feng. But there were not so many ifs. At this moment, all the gods in the god realm had their attention on the divine mirror. Just now, when Ji-dong activated his ability, the image in the divine mirror changed rapidly, as if it was tracking Thanos. Ji-dong's brows also relaxed slightly because his ability worked. It only took a few more seconds for him to be able to see Thanos' figure. And the mood of the gods in front of the divine mirror also fluctuated with the changes in the image. Soon, the image moved forward rapidly, and they were about to see him. However, in the next second, everyone was stunned. This was because the rapidly moving image in the divine mirror had suddenly come to a stop in midair. This was definitely not the appearance of finding someone. Instead, it was as if the other party had discovered Ji-dong's tracking and directly broke free. Did the tracking fail? Raging Flame asked tentatively. In fact, these words were somewhat looking down on Ji-dong. After all, he was a dignified divine king, and the person he was tracking was just a small soul master from the lower realm. Even if it was a soul master who had reached rank 100, it would be easy for Ji-dong to track him down. However, at this moment, he actually suspected that he had lost him. He was really looking down on him. However, Ji-dong nodded. That's right, this person is very special. It's as if his entire person has disappeared from the Douluo's world. I can't locate him. This small ability of his was to locate the other party's origin aura, but now that Thanos' aura had suddenly disappeared, he had no way of locating him. After that, Ji-dong continued. Furthermore, because of my tracking this time, he has become vigilant. If I were to investigate again, it would be very difficult to succeed. This time, Ji-dong was able to instantly locate Thanos' location and then track him down. The main reason was that Lin Feng did not react in time. Now, Lin Feng was already on guard. He would cut off his aura at all times. So even if Ji-dong wanted to locate him, he would not be able to do so. At this moment, the gods beside the divine mirror were all shocked. Just who is this Thanos? Ji-dong, the dignified divine king of evil, one of the most powerful people in the divine realm, was actually unable to track him down. This was truly too shocking. At this moment, the Azura god suddenly said, not only can this Thanos go against the rules, he can also cut off his own origin aura? Could it be that he's not from the Douluo's world? The divine realm was very strong and managed many lower realms. However, the gods also knew that other than the worlds they currently knew, there were definitely other worlds. Perhaps the other worlds were very weak, and perhaps some worlds were even stronger than their divine realm. Therefore, at this moment, after seeing Thanos' situation, the Azura god had such a guess. It's very possible. Laya nodded her head and said, in all these years, I have never seen anyone in the lower realms who was able to break the rules. This Thanos is the first, so it's really possible that he's someone from the outside world. Although it was rare for the outside world to invade, it was not like it had never happened before. On one hand, the Divine Realm Committee was established to manage the other gods, and on the other hand, it was established specifically to monitor the lower realms. In these past few years, the Divine Realm Committee had discovered many unexpected events in the lower realms. Half of them were due to the invasion of the outside world. If it's really the outside world, then it's very likely that it's a world that we haven't discovered before. Ji-dong said with slight excitement. In the lower realms managed by the Divine Realm, they had never found anyone like Thanos. Therefore, at this time, they estimated that Thanos was most likely from a world that they had never been to. The Divine Realm had not discovered a new world for many years. If Thanos really came from a new world as they thought, then it would be a big discovery. They had to get in touch with Thanos, and then use this as a bridge to see if they could go to the other world. For a time, the gods quickly discussed. A minute had passed in the Divine Realm, but in the world of Douluo, several hours had passed. At this point, Lin Feng confirmed that the feeling of prying had disappeared. Soon, he jumped out of the void, but this time, he was not directly exposed to the air. Instead, he had been wrapping the 1000G ruler on the surface to prevent his aura from being exposed. He knew that the reason why the prying could come to find him just now was mainly because his aura was exposed to the world. At this time, he and the world of Douluo were separated by the 1000G ruler, so it would be difficult for the other party to find him again. He raised his head and looked at the sky, thinking, gods? Now is not the time to confront you directly. Unless you come to the mortal world directly to find me, don't expect me to care about you. Lin Feng still needed to develop for a while, and wait for the appearance of the power of faith. To be honest, if Lin Feng knew what the gods in the Divine Realm were discussing at this time, he would probably be very shocked, because just through a few simple clues, they had analyzed that he was a person from the outer world. This group of gods even wanted to use him as a bridge to open a bridge to another world, and then enter the other world. Regarding this, Lin Feng could only say that he was thinking too much. Although he came from the outer world, his body did not directly transmigrate here. Instead, his soul came through a special way, and there was such a magical thing as the system. He himself had not understood the situation of the system, so how could he open a path to Earth? Of course, if the gods in the Divine Realm could really help him return to Earth, he still had ideas. However, the possibility of this matter was too low. Although the world of Douluo was very magical, in Lin Feng's opinion, the level of the world might not be as high as Earth. After all, this world was too weak. The entire world of Douluo was equivalent to a continent in his previous life. Such a small planet. The upper limit was so big that Lin Feng could not even go to the universe outside. The restrictions of the rules were too great. High EQ. The power of the rules of the world of Douluo is strong. Low EQ. A low-level world. Even the rules of the world are not perfect. Based on the current situation, the level of the system was much higher than this world. Lin Feng felt that the divine realm of Douluo would not be his end. Of course, these are just thoughts for Lin Feng. Soon, he put away his thoughts, returned to the original place, and continued the experiment. Chapter 539. God Realm. Because of Thanos' new discovery, the gods immediately started a heated discussion. In the end, the group of people discussed and came up with two opinions. The gods were also divided into two factions. One faction's idea was more radical. They wanted to directly go to the lower realm to capture Thanos and then force him to go to the other world. The other faction's idea was more conservative. They were prepared to contact Thanos with goodwill and then cooperate. The number of people in both factions was about the same, so there were differences in opinion. Although this Thanos is somewhat mysterious, he has not become a god yet. His strength may be at the top of Douluo's world, but to us, it is not worth mentioning. That's right, as long as we go down and capture him, we can investigate the situation of the world behind him and understand everything. The other party can go against the rules. He must have secrets we don't know. Before we figure it out, if we act rashly, we will definitely suffer a great loss. And we also know that the rules of Douluo's world are strong. If we force our way down, our strength will be suppressed. At that time, we may even fail miserably. Both sides kept arguing, elaborating the pros and cons. At this time, Ji Dong said, although we have a lot of restrictions in the lower realm, the heavenly officials don't. We only need to send some heavenly officials to the lower realm, and we can capture Thanos. His idea was to directly go down to the lower realm to capture him. After all, this was the fastest and most convenient way. Hearing this, Lai Yin frowned slightly and said, that's right, but the heavenly officials are not strong. After going down, they will only be about the same as this Thanos. If the two fight, it will definitely cause a great impact. The stronger heavenly officials were equivalent to those soul masters who had just broken through to rank 100. Some of the weaker ones could only fight against Douluo, who was at the peak of rank 99. Under such circumstances, if the heavenly officials were sent down, there might be a great battle in Douluo's world. And a battle of this level would have a great impact on the world. So in order to prevent Douluo's world from being destroyed, it was better to have friendly contact. Suddenly, God Azura said, just send more people to capture him. 5, 10 surround him. What can he do? If there are too many people, the rules of the world will definitely backfire. Moreover, the world of Douluo can't withstand so many experts. If we force our way in, the world's origin will be damaged. Lion said, the reason why the lower realm was called the lower realm was mainly because the world's origin was too weak. Even the origin of Douluo's world was very weak. If gods like them were to recklessly invade this kind of lower realm, there would only be one final outcome, and that would be the destruction of the origin and the destruction of the world. This was something that none of them wanted to see. After all, the foundation of the formation of the god realm was the manifestation of the convergence of the energy of thousands of lower realms. If these lower realms were to be destroyed, their god realm would also cease to exist. Therefore, at this moment, everyone was completely against God Azura's suggestion. The Shura deity also came back to his senses and didn't mention this point again. At this moment, the sea god coughed and said, I think it's better to contact him first. I have 2 inheritors in the world of Douluo, and they seem to be related to this Thanos. Furthermore, the 2 of them have a lot of authority in the current Great Xia Empire. We can use these 2 as a bridge to contact this Thanos. This plan works. Lion immediately said, just now, the 2 sides have been arguing. Now that the discoverer of the sea god's problem had proposed a solution, there was much less debate. However, the one who could make the final decision was not the sea god. It still needed the votes of the 5 god kings, especially the goddess of life and the god of destruction. These two were elders of the god realm, so they had to agree. For a moment, everyone's eyes were on the 5 god kings. At this moment, the 5 of them were rapidly communicating with their divine senses. Soon, the 5 of them finished their discussion. Lai Yin said, "We have unanimously decided to send 2 priests to the lower realm and go to the Great Xia Empire to contact the 2 inheritors of the sea god. Then, we will use this as a bridge to find an opportunity to contact Thanos. As long as the priests could come into contact with people, the god realm would have a way to talk to Thanos. They were gods. As long as they were sincere, they believed that Thanos would be willing to cooperate with them." Just like that, the God Realm Committee finally decided on a plan of action. Lai Yin and Poseidon would lead this matter. Following that, the 2 of them didn't stay and immediately went to choose suitable priests. At this moment, in the world of Douluo, after Lin Feng didn't sense any spying, he continued his experiments. Although the discussion in the God Realm didn't last long, 3 days had already passed in the lower realm. In these 3 days, Lin Feng had conducted hundreds of experiments on evil soul masters. Because he was in a hurry, Lin Feng didn't have much guarantee in terms of safety, and his theory wasn't very perfect. He could be said to be using the lives of evil soul masters to perfect his theory. Regarding this, Lin Feng didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. It wasn't that he didn't care about lives, but that these evil soul masters deserved to die. For them to be able to cultivate to the level of soul kings and soul emperors, they had at least 10 lives on their hands. This caused their minds to be somewhat affected. The more serious ones were even a bit like the walking corpses in the City of Slaughter. Just like that, in just 3 days, Lin Feng made great progress in his research on how to quickly break through soul power. He realized that as long as he injected energy into a soul master's body according to a specific rhythm, he could increase their soul power rank. However, the requirements for this energy were very high. There had to be no impurities. Otherwise, after a soul master absorbed it, it would clash with his martial soul. If it was light, he wouldn't be able to break through. If it was serious, he would go crazy and die. Actually, the method that evil soul masters used to increase their strength was very similar to Lin Feng's research. However, evil soul masters didn't have a way to purify soul power, so the energy they absorbed was full of impurities. It was also because of this that evil soul masters were very strange. They were even a little crazy. Furthermore, the limit of their abilities was basically the level of a soul emperor. They had no hope of becoming a soul sage. However, Lin Feng's method could perfectly increase the rank of someone's soul power without any side effects. However, he couldn't promote it on a large scale. He could only let Lin Feng do it himself. The reason was very simple. In the entire continent of Douluo, only he could create pure energy. On one hand, his martial soul was very special. His soul power was very pure. On the other hand, it was his abilities. It wasn't just his fighting strength. It was also his control over his soul power. Right now, Lin Feng's control over his soul power was at the peak of perfection. Even if it was someone else's soul power, he could split it into pure energy. Of course, Lin Feng had only tested this technique on soul masters around rank 50 or 60. He didn't know if it would work on Douluo. Theoretically, it could work on soul masters of any rank. However, Lin Feng couldn't be sure before he tried it. As he thought about it, Lin Feng sorted out his experiment data and quickly returned to Great Xia City. He didn't go to see anyone. Instead, he went straight to a huge building at the foot of the Martial Soul Mountain. This was the sparring plaza of the Great Xia Alliance. It was similar to the Soul Dueling Arena, but it was bigger than any Soul Dueling Arena on the continent. When the Great Xia Alliance held the season exam, it would be held here. The sparring partners of the Alliance would usually stay here. Usually, other than the season exam and Thanos coming over to fight from time to time, this place was relatively quiet. Elder Lin is here. Hello, Elder Lin. Hello, Elder Lin. The moment Lin Feng appeared, a group of titled Douluo surrounded him and greeted him with smiles on their faces. Douluo, soul sages, and so on couldn't even squeeze in with their enthusiasm. Even Bibi Dong and Douluo nodded from afar to express their goodwill. What a joke! The Great Xia Alliance's policy was too good. Originally, people like them who had been defeated were supposed to die, but the Alliance promised them that as long as they were sparring partners for a certain number of years, they would regain their freedom. If they performed well, they could even reduce their time. As for Lin Feng, he was a popular person in the Great Xia Alliance. He was also a manager of the Marvel family and Thanos' trusted aide. He was also highly praised on the continent. If they performed well in front of him, it was very likely that they would be remembered. The chances of their time being reduced were very high. That was why everyone was so enthusiastic. Lin Feng didn't let this enthusiasm get to his head. Instead, he smiled faintly and walked to the center of the plaza. Then, he raised his voice and said, "I'll give you 3 minutes to gather all the sparring partners here. Then, I'll make an announcement." When Lin Feng arrived, there were less than 50 sparring partners. But in reality, there were more than 300 sparring partners in the Great Xia Alliance. Not all of them were from the Martial Spear Hall. After all, not everyone in the Martial Spear Hall was a criminal. The Alliance didn't make things difficult for some of the soul masters with good reputations. They only punished them to do some missions. The Martial Spirit Hall's main sparring partners were those who were extremely hostile to the Alliance. There were more than 100 of them. As for the other 200 people, more than half of them were those who resisted the Alliance's development and unification. Some were killed, and the remaining strong ones were used as sparring partners. Most of them were Soul Emperors and Soul Kings. Previously, the Douluo Empire was in turmoil. After Tang San sent people to clean it up, he captured more than 20 Soul Masters to be sparring partners. Other than these people, there are also some who took the initiative to be sparring partners. After all, sparring partners were for the entire Great Xia Alliance. In the future, when a number of Soul Masters increased, the need for sparring partners would become more diverse. Some Soul Masters who lacked contribution points could become sparring partners to earn contribution points. Furthermore, in the future plans of the Alliance, these sparring partners would be combined with soul power to form a huge industrial chain. Of course, these were all for the future. At this moment, the Great Xia Alliance was still in the process of figuring it out. They would only be able to implement it after a period of time. Furthermore, those who took the initiative to be sparring partners didn't have to stay in the sparring square. When Lin Feng called for a gathering, these people naturally didn't have to come. Something big. Quick, quick, get everyone to gather here. Lin Feng's words carried a lot of weight. Now that he said that he had something big to announce, everyone quickly rushed to spread the news. Even Bibi Dong and Douluo, who were not far away, walked out with curiosity in their eyes. The Great Xia Empire had just been established not long ago. On the second day, it sent out dozens of powerful soul masters to quell the rebellion in the Douluo Empire. On the third day, the 4 lower sects completely surrendered and joined the Great Xia Alliance. After a period of time, hundreds of soul master forces in the Douluo Empire joined the Great Xia Alliance. Now, Lin Feng was going to announce something big again. This series of news caused Bibi Dong to be incomparably shocked. The efficiency of the Great Xia Alliance was too high. Their Martial Spirit Hall couldn't compare at all. In less than a minute, the square was filled with people. They were all sparring partners of the Great Xia Alliance. They were all people who had been convicted. Their bodies were all restrained, and they could only use the strength of their own bodies. Seeing this, Lin Feng glanced at everyone, especially at Douluo and Bibi Dong for a second. Then, he raised his voice and said, "Now, you have a chance to become free." Hearing this, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone's eyes lit up. How long had it been? They could suddenly become free. It would be strange if they weren't excited. But soon, Lin Feng continued, "However, this opportunity is dangerous, and it's life-threatening. As long as you survive it, then congratulations, you've successfully become free. But if you don't, then death is the only outcome." That's right. The reason why Lin Feng came here was to find high-level test subjects. After all, the ranks of evil soul masters were generally too low. The sparring partners here, on the other hand, had soul kings, soul emperors, soul title law, and all of them. What exactly do you want us to do? Someone asked. Lin Feng only said that their lives were in danger, but he didn't specify what it was, so everyone was eager to know. If they had the confidence to survive, then they would definitely go. However, Lin Feng said, I can't say exactly what it is, but I'm sure that you're not going to die. It's an experiment, and this opportunity has a limit. 5 soul kings, 3 soul emperors, soul sages, and soul de law, and 2 title de law. This time, I only want a total of 16 people. The more people in the experiment, the better. Lin Feng's experiment was almost done. He only needed to do one last test. 16 people? That's too little. Initially, everyone was worried about their lives, but after hearing the number of spots, they immediately felt that it was too little. Lin Feng didn't care about the mutterings of the crowd. Instead, he continued, I won't force anyone to take this opportunity. After all, it's life-threatening. I'll give you 10 minutes to consider. After 10 minutes, those who have ideas can come to me to sign up. With that, Lin Feng directly leaped and flew towards the Great Xiao Palace. On the spot, everyone started to discuss. Chapter 540. Experiment? What experiment? I've never heard of an experiment that could put one's life in danger. Yeah, I think this might be a trap set up by the Great Xia Alliance to secretly kill us. That's impossible. If the Great Xia Alliance wanted to kill us, wouldn't they have done so long ago? Why would they need to resort to such schemes? Yeah, the Great Xia Alliance is so powerful, they wouldn't use such methods on us. But what experiment is that? What exactly is it? Why would it put one's life in danger? Everyone was discussing. Some were talking about conspiracy theories, some didn't even understand what an experiment was, and some had their own ideas. For a moment, the square was bustling with noise and excitement. The reason for such a situation was mainly because the term experiment was too foreign to them. In their worldview, they had only heard of the term experiment from the Great Xia Alliance's laboratory. As for what exactly it was, they had no idea. Therefore, most of them couldn't understand Lin Feng's words. Even Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu were confused at this moment. Your Highness the Pope, what do you think about this? Zhu Douluo asked Bibi Dong. Hearing this, everyone's gaze fell on Bibi Dong. Although they were all captives, Bibi Dong was still respected by them. After all, her previous status was too high, and she was still very powerful even when she was imprisoned. As for Qian Daolu, it was the same. However, he was more low-key. Previously, he was in a hidden state in the Martial Spear Hall. Moreover, he wasn't on good terms with Bibi Dong, so the one in charge was still Bibi Dong. I think we can try, Bibi Dong said calmly. There are 3 reasons. First, we are now fish on the chopping board. If the Great Xia Alliance really wants to kill us, we won't be able to resist at all. Second, Lin Feng has no reason to lie to us, so what he said is true. As long as we participate in the experiment, we will definitely be free. Third, this experiment has a death rate, but it shouldn't be high. After all, we are still useful to the Great Xia Alliance, so it's unlikely that they will send us to our deaths. Bibi Dong was a smart person. In these days, she had gathered a lot of information with Hu Lai's help. At this moment, she not only understood her own situation very well, but also the Great Xia Alliance's situation. Under such circumstances, she could roughly guess the current situation. When everyone heard this, they also felt that what Bibi Dong said made sense. Although he didn't know what the experiment was about, the mortality rate shouldn't be too high. At this moment, Bibi Dong continued, Of course, all of this is just my guess. The choice is in your hands. In his heart, Bibi Dong also wanted to participate in this experiment. However, Lin Feng had already said that this experiment was life-threatening. She wasn't 100% sure that she wouldn't die, so she wanted to take a look first. After all, it was only 10 years. She could afford to wait. Her Rakshas's 9th trial was rather special as it did not have a time limit. In other words, as long as she made it through 10 years, she still had a chance to become a god. Therefore, She would not participate in an adventure that she had no confidence in. After hearing Bibi Dong's words, the crowd in the square began to discuss again. However, this time, there were many more people who wanted to participate in this experiment. After all, the probability of the Great Xia Alliance killing them was too low. Compared to the 10 or 20 years of life as a prisoner, this risk was worth taking. Bibi Dong and Qian Liu's 10 years of training was specially arranged by Lin Feng, so there wasn't much time. As for the others, they usually took 15, 20, or even 30 years to reach the top. Under such circumstances, freedom was extremely tempting. In an instant, many people were tempted. They waited for Lin Feng to return before signing up. At the same time, in the Great Xia Palace, Lin Feng was also making a report. As the saying goes, nothing can be accomplished without rules. After the Great Xia Alliance was established, many things became standardized. In a while, Lin Feng would need to take some training soul masters away. If he didn't even inform them, it would inevitably cause chaos. They might even think that these training soul masters had run away. Therefore, at this moment, Lin Feng specially reported this matter. This way, these people wouldn't be treated as escaping. The report wasn't complicated. They just needed to record the general situation. Lin Feng's status in the alliance was extremely high. He gave the green light all the way and didn't wait at all. He quickly reported the matter. Later, he just needed to choose the people and record it down. Just like that, after reporting, Lin Feng didn't stay in the Great Xia Palace for long and quickly left. After that, he ate some food in the city. After about 10 minutes, he directly went to the training square. Elder Lin is here. I want to sign up. Elder Lin, I want to sign up too. Elder Lin, I'm a rank 83 agility type soul. I want to sign up too. Elder Lin, I'm a rank 79 soul sage. I want to sign up too. As soon as he reached the center of the square, the enthusiastic crowd surrounded Lin Feng. All around him were people who wanted to sign up. Lin Feng was mentally prepared. He estimated that there would be many people signing up, about 50 to 60 people. But in reality, there were more than 100 people who signed up. With so many experimental subjects, Lin Feng suddenly had a lot of space to choose from. This made him quite happy. Most importantly, the people who signed up were of all ranks. He could find all of them. Very good. I've remembered all the people who signed up. Now, stand in your ranks. Title Douluo 1 team. Soul Douluo 1 team. Soul Sage 1 team. As Lin Feng finished speaking, the 100 people who signed up quickly stood in their ranks. Those who didn't sign up stood around the square. Lin Feng's previous request was for 5 Soul Kings, 3 Soul Emperors, 3 Soul Sages, and 2 titled Douluo. Right now, there were only a dozen or so Soul Kings and Soul Emperors who had signed up. There were also more than 40 Soul Sages, more than 30 Soul Douluo, and more than 10 titled Douluo. Although there weren't many titled Douluo, in terms of strength, they accounted for more than 70% of the people who signed up. They were the most. Even Soul Douluo only made up about 60% of the people who signed up. Soul Kings, Soul Emperors, and Soul Sages made up less of the people who signed up. Lin Feng quickly understood the reason for this. It was very simple. The weaker the Soul Master, the less time they needed to train. Most of them only had about 10 years, and some even had 3 to 4 years. The stronger Soul Masters usually needed at least 10 years. That was why this situation happened. Lin Feng didn't think too much about it. After the Soul Masters were divided into teams, he quickly sensed and screened them. Lin Feng's method of finding suitable candidates was very simple. He only needed those who were weak and pleasing to the eye. As for those who were stronger, such as those above the Soul Douluo level, Lin Feng wanted to find those who had already lost all their experience points. For example, the titled Douluo who had stayed in Heaven Do City for more than a year were very suitable. Just like that, Lin Feng quickly selected these 16 people under this kind of selection criteria. At this moment, the Soul Masters who were selected were secretly happy. Those who weren't were a little disappointed. One had to know that this was a life-threatening experiment. Lin Feng felt that it was very strange for these people to have such thoughts. However, from his perspective, he was very happy to see these enthusiastic experimental subjects. Very good. The 16 of you, follow me. Lin Feng pointed to these people and said. Then he seemed to think of something. He turned his head and continued. Those who weren't selected, don't be anxious. There should be more opportunities like this in the near future. It won't be too late to sign up then. Hearing this, for some reason, everyone was looking forward to it. Bibi Dong, on the other hand, felt that the Great Xia Alliance was about to make a big move. After all, Lin Feng represented the Marvel family. That was an incomparably mysterious family. Now that they were frequently doing experiments, they were definitely preparing for a big move. Of course, this had nothing to do with her now. Right now, Bibi Dong's most important thing was to find a way to reduce the time she spent as a sparring partner. This way, she could have her freedom sooner. As for escaping, Bibi Dong and Douluo had thought about this before, but it was just a thought. The chances were too low. On one hand, Great Xia City's defenses were tight. The chances of them escaping were not high. On the other hand, they had restrictions on their bodies. The two of them didn't have any way to deal with these special restrictions. On top of that, Thanos was almost invincible. At this moment, the two of them were completely convinced. Without mentioning the situation in the plaza, Lin Feng left with the 16 people and directly reported a list of names. After that, he went to the north of Great Xia City. This was the experimental area. The Alliance's laboratory was here. The Great Xia Soul Master Academy was also opened in the northern district. There were many supporting facilities, and the atmosphere of learning was very good. The reason why Lin Feng came here was because he took a fancy to the facilities here. It would be more convenient for his experiments. Soon, Lin Feng divided the 16 people into groups and officially began the experiment. In fact, Lin Feng's method of quickly breaking through could be considered mature. After all, with the experimental data of evil soul masters, he had perfected many fatal parts. Although there was still a possibility of death in the experiment, the probability was not high. The purpose of Lin Feng's experiment was very simple. It was to eliminate the last chance of death and, at the same time, fix some small problems. If they were lucky, after the experiment on these 16 people, Lin Feng wouldn't have to find anyone else. However, if the experiment didn't go smoothly, he would have to find someone else. Furthermore, he would conduct other experiments. This was why he said that those sparring partners would have a chance. The experiment didn't require Lin Feng to stay by these people's side. After injecting energy into their bodies and unlocking a portion of the restrictions, Lin Feng went to study weapons. The weapons Lin Feng wanted to study were none other than the divine weapons used by Bibi Dong and Thousand Daos Lu. One was the Rakshasa Scimitar, and the other was the Angel Sword. Lin Feng had been studying these two things, but because the research of quickly breaking through was more important, he didn't spend too much time. Now that the experiment was at the stage of waiting for the results, Lin Feng finally had some free time. It could be seen that the materials of these two divine weapons were very special, especially the energy traces on them, which made Lin Feng feel very novel. However, after careful analysis, Lin Feng found that the materials were from Douluo's continent. It was just that because of the infusion of divine power, it became very powerful. Moreover, these divine weapons weren't weapons passed down from the god realm, but weapons used by gods after reaching rank 100 on Douluo's continent. In fact, in terms of craftsmanship, these divine weapons weren't very good. It was mainly because of the divine power that they became powerful. In Douluo's continent, there were some blacksmiths, such as Tang Hao, who forged divine weapons that were stronger than this. However, because they didn't have divine power, their power was a little weaker. Lin Feng didn't care much about this because he had the 1000G ruler. The weapon that the 1000G ruler transformed into had extremely powerful effects. Moreover, as long as enough soul power was added and a status soul skill was added, the effect would be even stronger than this divine weapon. Previously, when he fought with Bibi Dong and Thousand Daos Lu, he clearly understood the power of the 1000G ruler. At this moment, the reason why he was studying this divine weapon was mainly to refer to the advantages of divine weapons. For example, the size of the energy path, the patterns, and how to make soul power flow more smoothly, etc. After all, When the 1000G ruler transformed, it mainly relied on Lin Feng's soul power control and imagination. If the transformation was more precise, then the strength would be higher. Therefore, Lin Feng was very serious about studying this divine weapon. At this moment in the God realm, two carefully selected God officials stood in front of the gods, listening to their teachings. Bai Luo, Bai Shui, you two siblings are among the strongest God officials in the God realm. This time, I've handed the mission to you, and I hope that you won't let us down. The gods were all watching, and this gave Bai Luo and Bai Shui a lot of pressure. However, very quickly, Bai Luo nodded solemnly and said, "We promise to complete the mission." At this moment, the two of them were incomparably excited because they had a chance to descend. Bai Luo and Bai Shui were both divine citizens who grew up in the God realm. Because of their strong aptitudes, they quickly cultivated to the level of God officials. Now, they were at the peak of God officials and were extremely powerful. When they descended, they would be about the same as a rank 100 Soul Master. However, according to the rules of the God realm, gods couldn't casually descend. The two siblings hadn't left the God realm for so long. Now that they had a chance to go to the Douluo world, it would be strange if they weren't excited. Very good. We'll wait for the good news from the two of you. After a few words of encouragement, the group didn't waste any more words. A few God Kings took action and sent Bai Luo and Bai Shui down. Very quickly, the two of them passed through the world wall and arrived at the Douluo world. Chapter 541. The so-called world wall was a layer of special membrane that separated Douluo's world from the outside world. It had a strong rule power that could restrict people from leaving or entering Douluo's world. Lin Feng had wanted to fly into the sky many times before, but it was to no avail because he was blocked by this layer of world wall. At this moment, Bai Luo and Bai Shui passed through the world wall with the help of the gods and arrived in Douluo's world. The moment the world wall was opened, a special wave spread throughout the entire world. It felt like a calm water surface that was suddenly hit by a drop of water, causing ripples to spread across the entire water surface. This energy wave was very light and very weak. The living beings in Douluo's world couldn't detect it at all. However, Lin Feng was different. Strictly speaking, because he had a million-year soul ring, his strength had already surpassed the rules of Douluo's world. However, because his soul power hadn't reached rank 100, a part of his strength was still suppressed. Even so, when the world wall was opened, Lin Feng still discovered the wave. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't clear about the meaning of this wave. It was also his first time seeing it. However, the level of this wave was very high. It seemed to have surpassed Douluo's world. This made Lin Feng pay more attention to it. At this moment, he stopped what he was doing and spread out his spiritual power, trying to find the source of the wave. However, at this moment, the wave disappeared. It didn't even last for a second. If not for Lin Feng's strong spiritual power, he wouldn't have been able to sense it at all. However, at this moment, the wave disappeared without a trace. Lin Feng wanted to trace it, but there was no way for him to do so. Lin Feng sensed that the wave came from all directions. It was of a very high level. Now that he had lost the response, Lin Feng couldn't even tell which direction it was coming from. Was it an illusion? No. Lin Feng was very sure that something must have happened. Just now, he even felt a sense of yearning in his heart. It was as if a higher level world was opening up to him. There was a strong energy there, and as long as he went there, he could quickly become stronger. Was it the God realm? Lin Feng couldn't help but make such a guess. But what happened? This kind of fluctuation couldn't have appeared for no reason. Could it be that someone had ascended to the God realm? But wasn't the time taken a little too short? In less than a second, he had ascended at the speed of light. In any case, in his heart, Lin Feng did not think that anyone would ascend. After all, there were no signs at all. It happened too quickly. At this time, the only thing Lin Feng could do was to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. After all, he had no experience with this kind of special situation. At this time, he couldn't even find the source. He could only wait quietly for the situation to happen. Moreover, Lin Feng was still somewhat confident in his own strength, enough to deal with all kinds of accidents in the Douluo world. Just as he was thinking about these things, in the northwestern corner of the star Luo state of the former star Luo Empire. There was a city known as the capital of metal, Gongxin City. This place was rich in all kinds of rare metals, and many blacksmiths and craftsmen gathered here. It was famous throughout the continent. After Tang, San founded the Tang sect, he often came here. The reason why the star Luo Empire's army was more powerful than the Heaven Do Empire's army was, on one hand, because of the country's culture, and on the other hand, because of their superior weapons. And Gongxin City's contribution couldn't go unnoticed. At this time, in a deserted valley 25 kilometers north of Gongxin City, a man and a woman slowly descended from the sky. These two people were the brother and sister, Bai Luo and Bai Shui, who had descended from the God realm. Before they set off, the two of them had specially designed their clothes to fit the style of Douluo world. After all, the gods in the God realm were all powerful beings who had ascended from the lower realms. Because of their different cultures and worldviews, their clothes were also very different. So, to avoid being strange, the two siblings had changed their clothes. At this time, the two of them didn't immediately go to Great Xia City to look for people after descending. They didn't know much about Douluo world, and in addition, it was their first time descending, so everything was very new and strange. In order to avoid failing the mission because of their own mistakes, the two of them needed to quickly brush up on their knowledge of Douluo world. And because the flow of time in the God realm and Douluo world was different, the two of them had plenty of time to complete the mission. Just like this, the two of them, filled with curiosity, walked into the city closest to them, Gongxin City. Because of the importance of the metal capital, after the Alliance took over the Star Luo Empire, they immediately opened an Alliance branch here. The Tang sect also immediately ran over to open a branch here and set up a production line here. The main thing was that the metal resources here were too rich, and they could basically get anything they wanted. Although the Great Xia Alliance had gathered the resources of the entire continent, most of them were extremely basic, and Gongxin City had the most rare metals. Now that the production line had been set up here, the cost of production had decreased by a lot. Originally, because of the hostile relationship between the Martial Soul Hall and the Great Xia Alliance, the relationship between the entire continent was very tense. Even Gongxin City was greatly affected, and its trade had decreased greatly, not even half of what it used to be. But now, because of the establishment of the Great Xia Empire, in addition to the presence of various powers, the entire Gongxin City had a completely new look. Not only did the trade return to its previous state in half a month, but now that more than a month had passed, the trade volume had tripled. Most importantly, the various powers of the Great Xia Alliance had brought in advanced management methods and technology. In addition to the large-scale influx of all kinds of novel soul tools, the lifestyles of the entire Gongxin City citizens had been greatly changed. Bai Shui and Bai Luo walked in the city, almost stopping every 5 steps and stopping every 10 steps. They had no choice. There were too many novel things, and everything they saw was new to them. Douluo world was a core lower realm under the God realm, and there were many records regarding the situation of Douluo world in the God realm. The two of them were naturally familiar with these records. But now, the things that they had seen were all unheard of. For example, there was something called a cell phone, which was small and rectangular, but could actually communicate with people thousands of miles away. There was also the currency of these people. Other than gold, silver, and copper coins, there was also a special kind of card. These cards had numbers written on them, and when these cards collided with each other, they could transfer numbers. This kind of currency was too novel. Other than that, there were many more things, and these things dazzled the two of them. Very quickly, a day had passed, and the two of them had also walked around Gongxin City for an entire day. Among them, there were new things that they had only seen but had never experienced before, and all of them refreshed their worldview. The feeling of exploring everything was too dazzling, and it was much more interesting than the God realm. No wonder they had heard that the God Kings often secretly descended to the lower realm. Cough, cough. These were all rumors, and they would not discuss them openly. At this moment, the two of them had walked around for an entire day, and they sat down in a spacious plaza. This was the plaza of the Great Xia Alliance's branch, and it was open 24/7. There was also a large hall nearby that was dedicated to introducing the alliance. After all, most people in the Douluo Empire did not have a complete understanding of the alliance, which was why there was such a comprehensive introduction. Of course, the various branches of the Heaven-Do Empire had also started to add such halls, and this was also part of Lin Feng's deification plan. In these halls, he would have many opportunities to promote himself. And now, after sitting in the plaza for a while, the two siblings by Shui and by Luo came to this large hall. They did not know much about the Great Xia Alliance, and here they had the opportunity to learn more about the alliance. They believed that after learning this information, they would have a better chance of completing the mission. Just like this, the two of them began to learn about Douluo's world in Gongxin City. At the same time, within the Great Xia Alliance, Lin Feng did not think too much about the aura from this morning. At this moment, he had reached a critical point in his research of the god weapon in his hands. He had collected a large number of weapons, summarized their strengths, and then connected the information of the god weapon to his 1,000 manipulation ruler. Bit by bit, Lin Feng's 1,000 manipulation ruler's power began to increase. On the second day, Lin Feng had already studied almost all the weapons on the continent. He had also gathered all the advantages of each weapon to himself. At this point, Lin Feng's 1,000 manipulation ruler's power had increased by about 10%. Don't underestimate this 10% increase. However, Lin Feng's 1,000 G ruler was extremely terrifying right now. An increase of 10% on top of this foundation was extremely outstanding. The most important thing was that the strength of a weapon would be magnified several times in actual combat. With 10% of the 1,000 manipulation ruler's power, Lin Feng's battle prowess would increase by at least 50%. Actually, the main reason for increasing his 1,000 manipulation ruler's power was not the way the god weapons were made, nor was it the craftsmanship. These were only a small part of the reason, and the main reason was the way the god weapons converted energy. Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu had not become gods, and their bodies still had soul power. However, the god weapons were able to display some of the effects of god power. Although the consumption was large, compared to the increase in power, it was worth it. Lin Feng improved this energy conversion method and then adapted it to his 1,000 manipulation ruler. Finally, his 1,000 manipulation ruler had its current strength. After spending half a day, Lin Feng came to the forest and tested the 1,000 manipulation ruler's power. In the end, the effect was very outstanding, and it was similar to what he had expected. His overall power had increased by about 50%, which was very outstanding. At this point, Lin Feng had a very good understanding of the Rakshasa scimitar and the Seraph sword, so there was no research value. Lin Feng naturally would not be kind enough to return them to Bibi Dong and Qian Daolu. He could either give them away as weapons, or keep them as trophies, or be more selfless and put them in the Grand Xia Palace for people to see. From these 3 points, Lin Feng was more inclined to let people see them. After all, this was a symbol of the martial spirit palace being destroyed by the Grand Xia Alliance, and it was beneficial for Thanos' reputation to spread. Thinking of this, Lin Feng specially built a round platform in the middle of the square in front of the Grand Xia Palace. The full moon scimitar and the seraph sword were placed on the round platform, and from afar, it looked like a processed bow and arrow. On the round platform, the names of the two weapons were written. Of course, these two weapons were not placed here carelessly. Lin Feng set up a defensive formation on the round platform to prevent people from touching or stealing. From the beginning of the construction of the round platform to the completion, it took less than half an hour. Even so, because the flow of people in the square was not small and people were spreading word of mouth, a large number of people quickly gathered here. Taking this opportunity, Lin Feng stood on the side of the round platform and said, "This is the Rakshasa scimitar and the seraph sword, two god weapons that were once used by gods. Back then, they were the weapons of the martial spirit palace's Pope, Bibi Dong, and the great consecrator, Qian Lu. However, Mr. Destroy was very powerful, and he captured the two of them alive in the battle back then. So these weapons are taken away. Now, they're specially placed here for the world to see and remember the battle back then. As soon as his voice fell, the crowd immediately burst into enthusiastic cheers. At the same time, there were also very enthusiastic discussions, telling the power of Thanos Overlord. In this regard, Lin Feng left after a few words of encouragement. He just had to show up and say a few words. He still had a lot of things to do, and time was very precious. Just like that, Lin Feng quickly continued to immerse himself in the experiment. On one hand, he recorded the situation of the soul masters who had been injected with their soul power. At the same time, in his spare time, he also began to study the increase of the soul ring's age and its growth. The increase of the soul ring's age did not mean that the soul ring would become stronger before it was absorbed. It meant that after you absorbed the soul ring, you could increase the age of the soul ring, just like the reward that Lin Feng and the others received after they completed the God's test. This research was very difficult. At least Lin Feng did not know much about the use of divine power at the moment. He also did not understand the principle of the God's reward, so he could only fumble around. Fortunately, the first experiment gave Lin Feng a direction to study. He believed that as long as he continued to study, there would be a breakthrough eventually. As for the growth of the soul ring, this was even more difficult because the gods did not seem to be able to do it. The growth of the soul ring sounded similar to the increase of the soul ring's age. In fact, this was a completely different research. The inspiration came from Lin Feng's soul bone. After all, after the soul bone was absorbed by the soul master, it would increase with the soul master's strength. It was the same for the soul skill. As long as the soul master's strength increased, the effect would also increase. However, there was still a little difference between the soul skill and the soul bone because the soul bone itself became stronger, while the soul skill itself did not become stronger. It was the soul master's soul power that became stronger. However, the soul ring itself was even worse because the increase in strength had nothing to do with the soul ring. No matter how the soul master's body or soul power changed, the soul ring itself would still strengthen the soul master. And Lin Feng's research was going against the heavens to make the soul ring that did not change stronger. To be honest, this experiment was the most difficult. Even Lin Feng did not have the slightest confidence to do it. But it was also because it was difficult that the benefits after it was researched were also huge. As long as Lin Feng succeeded in the challenge, wouldn't the power of faith appear directly? Chapter 542. In fact, Lin Feng's reputation on the continent was already very high. As long as he operated well for a period of time, he would definitely be able to obtain the power of faith. After all, Douluo's world had undergone earth-shattering changes compared to before. Especially with the emergence of mobile phones, the efficiency of information transmission had greatly increased, resulting in a qualitative leap. When Poseidon became a god, he didn't have such methods, so he could only use the most primitive method to promote himself, which was to visit personally. But now, with mobile phones, Lin Feng didn't even need to show his face to maintain a sense of mystery. In addition to the promotion of the alliance, he could easily be deified. Furthermore, the transmission of information had greatly increased. As long as he continued to spread his popularity, the power of faith would definitely appear faster. The principle was the same as those celebrities in his previous life. After a period of time, you would directly explode in popularity and the overwhelming amount of traffic would attack you, causing everyone to discuss it. Currently, Lin Feng was doing something similar. Furthermore, he was monopolizing the promotion and using the power of the entire alliance. The effect was even more outstanding. On one hand, it was broadcasting. On the other hand, it was establishing the Great Xi'an newspaper and distributing it throughout the continent. The response was very enthusiastic. The reason why there was such an enthusiastic response was mainly because these things were too new. In Douluo's world, regardless of whether it was soul masters or ordinary people, they had never encountered such a thing before. Now that they saw it, they were very curious. And now, The reason why Lin Feng was doing research was to create one hot topic after another and maintain his popularity at the peak. Otherwise, if he kept repeating the same thing, people would be tired of judging beauty. Only by constantly innovating could he maintain the vitality and at the same time shorten the time for the power of faith to appear. With this thought in mind, Lin Feng quickly perfected the soul power breakthrough experiment. At the same time, he was also carrying out theoretical calculations for other experiments. In the outside world, during this period of time, the infrastructure of the Great Xia Alliance was rapidly spreading throughout the continent. Because it was a new thing, there was a lot of resistance in the beginning. After all, people would always subconsciously resist things that they were unfamiliar with. However, under the powerful strength of the alliance and the trend of promotion, the standards of the entire continent were soon unified, and people gradually accepted the current situation. And Lin Feng's plan was gradually implemented on the continent. I won't go into the details of the first 5-year plan. In general, it was very simple, and that was to make the word fairness deeply ingrained into society. This was the foundation of the Great Xia Empire, the core foundation of its development. Only when this concept was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people would society progress. Otherwise, the establishment of the Great Xia Empire wouldn't have any epic-making significance if the world was still the same as before. As long as the first 5-year plan was completed, the second 5-year plan could be carried out smoothly. While the entire continent was in full swing, Bai Shui and Bai Luo spent 3 days in Gongxin City to gain a clear understanding of the Douluo continent. Especially the history of the Great Xia Empire, the two of them had thoroughly researched it. 5 years ago, the situation on the continent was still very normal. The martial spirit hall was above the two empires, and the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire were competing against each other. But in a short 5 years, everything had changed. The Great Xia Alliance expanded at an unimaginable speed. In a very short period of time, they occupied the entire Heaven Do Empire, and more than 90% of the Soul Master organizations joined them. Many hidden powerhouses came out, and even the Clear Sky sect joined the Great Xia Alliance. The founder of the alliance, the Marvel family, was even more mysterious. They seemed to have appeared out of thin air and quickly developed the Great Xia Alliance. Other than that, there were also the two inheritors of the Sea God, Tang San and Lin Feng. These two were also very strange. One was the leader of the Tang sect, and the other was a deacon of the Marvel family. Not only were the two of them strong, but their backgrounds were also top-notch in the continent. Right now, the brother and sister had to go to Great Xia City and meet these two people. Then, they would use them as a bridge to communicate with Thanos. With these thoughts in mind, Bai Luo and Bai Shui tested each other for an entire day. After they were prepared, they walked towards Great Xia City the next morning. The two of them didn't plan to hide their identities, because it couldn't be hidden. After all, they had to tell Thanos that they were from the God Realm in the end. They might as well tell him from the start. This way, it would be easier for them to complete their mission. Just like that, the two of them quickly arrived in Great Xia City. Great Xia City was the capital of the Great Xia Empire. After all, whether it was soul tool technology or some new gadgets, they were the first to appear here. Furthermore, everything in Great Xia City was brand new, because it had been reorganized once, and it gave off a good feeling. Right now, the two of them entered. Even though they were mentally prepared, they still felt a sense of novelty. However, they didn't waste any time and directly walked towards the Great Xia Palace. As they walked up the mountain, they could see that the faces of the people who walked up were filled with blissful smiles. The Great Xia Empire was really not simple to be able to make people so satisfied. This also meant that the person who was being controlled, Thanos, was as outstanding as his abilities. Very soon, the two of them arrived at the plaza in front of the Great Xia Palace. This place was open to the outside world, and anyone could come up. As they looked at the round platform in the center of the plaza, there was a trace of surprise in their eyes. The two weapons on the round platform actually contained a lot of divine power, which meant that they were godly weapons. Weren't they afraid that they would be stolen if they were placed in the plaza? So, casually. Just as he thought of this, Douluo discovered that there was actually an extremely intricate formation on the round platform. Furthermore, the formation was extremely hidden, and even when he first looked at it, he didn't notice it. Brother, did you notice that those two godly weapons have the aura of the Rakshasa god and the angel god? These can't be their weapons, right? Bai Shui asked in disbelief. The Rakshasa god and the angel god weren't weak gods in the god realm, and were considered first-class gods. The godly weapons that they had used before weren't weak, and now that they were placed here, where were their users? There are words on it. Bai Luo's eyes were sharp, and he saw the words on the round platform. Hearing this, Bai Shui immediately looked over. Very soon, the two of them were shocked. No wonder before they came to the lower realm, the sea god had told them not to get into a conflict with Thanos. It turned out that the other party was actually so strong. He captured the inheritors of the angel god and the Rakshasa god alive, and he even used godly weapons. This strength was too strong and definitely not weaker than the two of them. Thinking about this, the two of them evaluated Thanos even more in their hearts. They weren't too shocked, and very soon, the two of them walked past the square and headed straight for the Great Xia Palace. The Great Xia Palace was obtained after the former Pope's palace was renovated. It was divided into two parts, the Outer Palace and the Inner Palace. The Outer Palace was the headquarters of the Great Xia Alliance, and there were tens of thousands of soul masters going in and out every day to deal with all kinds of matters. As for the Inner Palace, it was a place that only the higher-ups of the Alliance could enter, and this was specially announced. There was also a small square in front of the Inner Palace, and there was also a sign on it. If someone tried to barge in, if the circumstances were less serious, they would usually only be fined or sent to do a mission. And if the circumstances were more serious, they might be directly killed. After all, the soul masters in the Inner Palace were usually at the level of titled Douluo. If you barged in so arrogantly, you would be courting death. As for the two siblings, Bai Luo and Bai Shui, of course, they didn't intend to barge in. Instead, they slowly walked to the small square in front of the Inner Palace. After that, the two of them cupped their hands together and said, Bai Luo, Bai Shui, is here to pay a visit to the leader of the Great Xia Alliance, Tang San. They knew that Tang San was in the Inner Palace, so he would definitely be able to hear what they said. And things were just as they thought. Right now, Tang San was cultivating in the Inner Palace, and when he heard the voices, he was immediately jolted awake. This voice is so unique. Although it was just a simple sentence, Tang San could sense that the person who spoke had an extremely high degree of control over their soul power. This was because the voice wasn't loud, but it could pass through the layers of walls and clearly reach his ears. Most importantly, no one else could hear it, and only he could hear it. Because of this, Tang San was jolted awake and rushed over. In less than half a minute, Tang San was in front of Bai Luo and Bai Shui. The two of them were more than 10 meters apart, and Tang San didn't rashly approach them. This was because he couldn't sense any aura from the two of them, which meant that they were extremely strong, even stronger than he was. Furthermore, their faces were unfamiliar, and in a situation where he didn't know if they were friend or foe, it was always right to be cautious. Who are you? Why are you looking for me? Tang San looked at the two of them and asked quietly. At the same time, he was also carefully observing the two of them, trying to figure out something. However, after a glance, other than feeling that the two of them had a special aura, there didn't seem to be anything special. At the same time, the two siblings were also sizing up Tang San. They could tell that Tang San wasn't weak and was about to break through to the titled Douluo. Furthermore, the soul power in his body was very condensed and was much stronger than soul masters at the level of soul Douluo. Although this information wasn't very accurate, it was already very good that they could come to such a conclusion after a simple look. The two of us are from the God realm. Bai Luo took a step forward and said calmly. As he spoke, the divine power in his body rippled slightly, and a wave of energy that transcended the world of Douluo rippled out. That kind of divine aura made Tang San feel very surprised. At the same time, the words of the two of them also made Tang San very shocked. God realm? Is it true? Tang Sin didn't believe the two of them directly. After all, this matter was too ridiculous. Tang Sin couldn't possibly know what the God realm was like, and he had never seen a god before. And the two people in front of him said that they were from the God realm. Could they really be gods? But shouldn't the gods have already ascended to the God realm? How could they come down? Anyway, because of the words of the two of them, Tang San's heart really blew up, and he thought of countless questions. In the end, these questions turned into a sentence. How can you prove that you are from the God realm? Although the God realm was illusory, it was the ultimate goal of soul masters. However, Lin Feng had told Tang San before that the God realm was just a slightly stronger world, and the gods were just slightly stronger soul masters. In essence, they were no different from ordinary people. They were all living beings who sought benefits and avoided harm. It was because of this idea that Tang San didn't worship the gods too much. Instead, he had an attitude of equality. After all, in Tang San's heart, he would become a god sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. Proof. Douluo was stunned. The reason why he released his divine power was to show his identity in the God realm. Why would Tang San ask this question? Actually, Douluo was also taking things for granted. Tang San had never seen a real god, so how could he recognize his divine power? In Tang San's opinion, the energy wave released by Douluo could be a kind of special soul power. After all, there were too many types of martial souls on Douluo's continent. Even the masters didn't know all of them. Even if the Great Xia Alliance gathered the information of the entire continent, they couldn't control all the martial souls on the continent. There were always some martial souls that had never been discovered. Yes, if you can't prove that you're really from the God realm, how do I know if you are deliberately pretending? Tang San said with a look of certainty. While speaking, Tang San put his left hand on a small token at his waist and then pressed his finger quietly. This was a Marvel family token that Lin Feng had specially given to Tang San. In addition to sensing the direction of the other clansmen, it also had the function of communication. At this time, after Tang San spread his spiritual power on the token, he quickly sent out a few words. Fenggu, small square in the Great Xia Palace, come quickly. As soon as this news was sent out, Lin Feng, who was conducting an experiment, received it. What could happen in the Great Xia Palace? Come quickly? Was it that urgent? At first, he was stunned. Then, Lin Feng's spiritual power spread towards the Great Xia Palace in the south. Divine power? Good heavens! Someone from the God realm really came. Although Douluo's divine power wave only flashed and disappeared, not much time had passed at this time. There were still slight remnants in the air. And Lin Feng had discovered this point, from which he deduced that someone from the immortal realm had come. The main thing was that he had sensed a special energy wave a week ago. However, because the wave had flashed and disappeared, he didn't catch it. At this time, the man and woman in the courtyard were most likely from the God realm. Thinking of this, Lin Feng packed up in a laboratory and quickly rushed towards Great Xia City. At the same time, in the square, Douluo waved his hand and a ball of divine power was condensed. It emitted a colorful light, which made Tang San feel very special. This is divine power, an extremely pure energy. You should be able to sense its uniqueness. Divine power was extremely pure and was completely incomparable to soul power. Now that Douluo had condensed it, it was actually enough to prove his identity. At this point, Tang San was already somewhat convinced by Douluo's words. This was because he could sense that this ball of energy was extremely special. It was a little similar to what he had sensed on Sea God Island. Chapter 543. The siblings were surprised by Tang San's cautiousness. After all, they were gods. To the people of the lower realm, they were superior beings. They were sure that Tang San knew that they were special when they released their divine power. Under such circumstances, Tang San still doubted their identities. His cautious attitude surprised them. On Tang San's side, he was also very surprised. He was not surprised that they were from the God realm. He was surprised by their purpose. After all, it was a fact that the two of them came to Douluo's world. There was no point in him being surprised. As for their purpose, why would gods from the God realm come to Douluo's world? Furthermore, They had directly come to Great Xia City. Why? The reason for this was what Tang Sen should be concerned about. As he thought about it, Tang Sen immediately asked, "What is your purpose? Why are you looking for me?" As he spoke, Tang San was in a state of high tension. His soul bone, soul ring, martial soul, and so on were all ready to react at any time. Tang San had never been afraid to judge others with the worst intentions. However, the strength of these two people was extremely terrifying. Before he figured out their purpose, he had to be vigilant. Fortunately, this was the headquarters of the Great Xia Alliance. There were many strong people here. Mr. Destroy was also in the city. If something really happened, his life would at least be guaranteed. At this moment, Shui spoke. Douluo's world is very important to the God Realm. Now the whole world has changed greatly because of Thanos of the Marvel family. We came to the lower realm specifically to investigate this matter. You and Lin Feng are both the inheritors of the Sea God. In addition to the unification of the Great Xia Empire, we came to find you. It had to be said that Bai Shui's ability to organize her words was very strong. In just 2 sentences, she explained the cause and effect of the matter and their purpose in coming to the lower realm. So you're saying that you're here to investigate Elder Mia? Tang San confirmed. That's right. Bai Luo nodded. At this moment, Lin Feng's voice suddenly rang out. So, why are you investigating Elder Mia? Just now, Lin Feng did not teleport over, but sprinted over. This was because he could sense the difference between Bai Luo and Bai Shui. Both of them were filled with God power. It was obvious that they were from the God world. In order to not expose his true strength in front of these two people, Lin Feng had concealed himself. However, when Tang San was talking to the two of them just now, he had been quietly paying attention to them with his psychic power, so he heard everything. At the same time, Lin Feng was also very surprised, because he really didn't understand why the people of the God realm would descend to the lower realm because of Thanos. Lin Feng remembered that in the original work, there didn't seem to be any cases of gods descending to the heavenly realm. After all, the difference between the two worlds was too great, and there were very few interactions between them. But now, because of Thanos, he actually came down to the lower realm. What was the reason? This must be Lin Feng. Bai Luo chuckled. Lin Feng and Tang San's talents were extremely strong, and now they were favored by the Sea God, even if the two of them couldn't obtain the Sea God's deity position at the same time. But because of the relationship with the Sea God, it was not difficult to find another deity position for the other person. Therefore, to the two soul masters who were almost guaranteed to become gods, the two of them still treated them as equals and didn't act high and mighty. We said that we're investigating Thanos, but actually, we can't call it an investigation. We're planning to cooperate with him. Cooperate? What kind of cooperation? Lin Feng asked. The people of the God Realm found someone they had never seen before to cooperate with. Lin Feng's first thought was they're up to no good. After all, this was too abnormal. Moreover, he had a special feeling that he was being watched, as if someone was deliberately looking for him. Under such circumstances, he subconsciously resisted the cooperation that the two of them mentioned. This is confidential. We can't say. We haven't talked to Thanos. But what we can guarantee is that this cooperation will only benefit him and not harm him. After all, it was a matter that concerned a world and was very important to the God Realm. Obviously, they couldn't tell Lin Feng and Tang San. Lin Feng didn't beat around the bush and said directly, I'm now talking to you on behalf of the Marvel family. If you sincerely want to cooperate, you should at least tell me the details of the cooperation and not hide the situation here. They had to see Thanos before saying it. Dream on. Before he figured out their intentions, Lin Feng wouldn't agree at all. After all, he wasn't facing people from Douluo's continent, but strong people from the God Realm, who knew what special methods they had. Lin Feng wouldn't be stupid enough to meet them. Although the strength of Bai Luo and Bai Shui in front of him was very ordinary, equivalent to his strength when he had 2 million-year soul rings, he wasn't afraid at all. But for the sake of his own life, it wasn't Lin Feng's original body that came over, but his avatar. He didn't use his avatar because it was too virtual. After all, these two people were from the God Realm. It wouldn't be good if they saw through it. It's not that we deliberately want to hide this matter, but it's too important. The godly king deliberately told us to tell Thanos personally. Douluo frowned slightly. In fact, before coming to the lower realm, the two of them didn't think that this mission would be difficult. They just had to run to Great Xia City and meet people. As long as they saw Thanos, they would send a signal to the God Realm. Then, the gods of the God Realm would use the divine mirror to talk to Thanos. But such a simple mission made the two of them feel that it was a little tricky. This was because Lin Feng and Tang San treated them very calmly and indifferently. They didn't give them any special treatment because they were from the God Realm. This made them surprised and helpless at the same time. These two people didn't play by the rules at all. That won't do. Lin Feng shook his head and said, "Before we confirm the details of the cooperation, I won't bring you to see Mr. Destroy." Hearing this, Bai Luo and Bai Shui frowned slightly. Tang San's eyes lit up, and he admired Lin Feng even more. There were many people who could talk, but there were very few who could do what they said. Obviously, Lin Feng was such a person. Back then, Lin Feng and Tang San said that gods were not much different from ordinary people. They were just a little stronger, and it was fine to treat them normally. Just now, Tang San also had this mentality when he talked to Bai Shui and Bai Shui. But in reality, he was very nervous. He was a little weak when he talked to the two of them, and he didn't even have the confidence to ask questions. However, Lin Feng didn't have these problems at all. He was extremely confident when he spoke. Even when facing a god, he could reject with stern words. This kind of confidence was really daunting. Bai Luo didn't expect Lin Feng to reject him so directly. He was speechless for a moment. There were too few people in the God Realm, and the circle was very simple. Although Bai Luo and Bai Shui were extremely powerful among the heavenly priests, they had very little experience. Although they had studied the knowledge of Douluo's world for a few days, they had learned very rudely and didn't have any accumulation. Now that they heard Lin Feng say this, they didn't know what to say. Seeing this, Lin Feng also knew that he couldn't get anything out of them if he continued to ask. These two obviously didn't plan to tell him what the cooperation was about. Or rather, they didn't have the authority to tell him and needed to ask for instructions from their superiors. That was the truth. When Bai Luo and Bai Shui came to the lower realm, they were ordered to see Thanos before talking about anything. Now that Lin Feng's attitude was so firm, they didn't know what to do next. At this moment, Lin Feng waved his hand and said, "Since you don't agree, let's put this matter aside for now." Then, he continued, "As the two of you are special envoys from the God Realm, the Great Xia Empire has prepared a welcome banquet for you. Please come to the palace." Although the two sides didn't reach a consensus regarding the cooperation, the Great Xia Empire still had to follow the most basic etiquette. On the other hand, Bai Luo and Bai Shui were a little confused. With regards to Lin Feng's invitation, the two of them didn't want to attend the banquet. At this moment, they quickly said, "Thank you for your kindness, but this cooperation is very important. We can't make a decision regarding the content that you want to know. Give us 3 days, we'll go back and discuss it." "That's good too. We'll wait for the good news then." Lin Feng smiled and cupped his hands. Tang San also cupped his hands, showing the proper etiquette. Whether Bai Luo and Bai Shui stayed or left didn't mean much to Lin Feng. He was more concerned about the motive behind the God Realm. What exactly was this cooperation? If they didn't say it, Lin Feng wouldn't agree. However, because of their hesitation, Lin Feng felt that the probability of the cooperation with the God Realm wasn't high. If they really wanted to harm him, they would have directly told him the content of the cooperation just now. This way, they could quickly gain his trust and then think of ways to harm him. Of course, these were all Lin Feng's guesses. Maybe they were playing hard to get. Therefore, at this moment, Lin Feng's strategy was very simple. That was to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. He didn't care what these gods thought. He just had to protect his base. Just like that, Bai Luo and Bai Shui left quickly. Tang San moved closer to Lin Feng and asked, "Feng Gu, are these two really God's messengers?" Tang San wasn't completely sure that the two people just now were gods. Therefore, he wanted to confirm it with Lin Feng. "I think so." Lin Feng looked away and said calmly. Hearing this, Tang San said excitedly, "The God Realm wants to cooperate with Mr. Destroy. Mr. Destroy is really too strong." Everyone knew how strong Thanos was. After all, he had captured BB Dong and Thousand Streams alive. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the best in the continent. Even a rank 99 pinnacle Douluo like Tang Chun was nothing in front of Hu Yuhao. He was completely subdued. However, no matter how strong Thanos was, no one could be sure of how strong Thanos was until there was no one to compare him to. However, now that the God Realm's messengers had appeared, it meant that the God Realm was taking Thanos seriously. With this as a comparison, if the news were to spread, everyone would know that Thanos' strength had reached the level of a god. The comparison was secondary. The most important thing was that the God Realm's messengers wanted to come into contact with Thanos. This was a huge hot topic. It was even more shocking than all the things that he had researched before. After all, he was a god, an existence that countless people worshipped. If this news were to spread, the impact would be extremely terrifying. At this moment, Lin Feng already had an idea. If it was implemented well, he might be able to obtain the power of faith very soon. He wouldn't simply spread the news. Instead, he would first leak some rumors, such as the god's messengers coming into contact with Thanos. Anyway, he would first hype this up and let everyone in the continent talk about it. After that, when he wanted to negotiate with the god's messengers, he would not negotiate in secret. Instead, he would put this negotiation on the table. Just like when the Great Xia Empire was established, he needed to face the continent. When the time came, Lin Feng would invite strong people to come and watch the ceremony. At the same time, he would publicize this matter through the radio and newspapers. At the level of publicity, Lin Feng would certainly not simply report the truth. He would add some embellishments on the basis of facts to make Thanos appear more mysterious in the whole incident. At that time, Lin Feng would also let his avatar spread the faith in the Marvel family in major cities. If this matter was carried out smoothly, this faith would slowly change from a general belief to a person. Under the publicity of his avatar, first Thanos would be deified, then Lin Feng. And this was Lin Feng's whole plan. As long as it was successfully implemented, he would soon be deified. Don't think that this was something that Lin Feng thought of on a whim. The arrival of the people from the heavenly realm was just an opportunity. Lin Feng had thought of this plan a long time ago, but he did not find a good opportunity. Originally, he thought that after the research on increasing the age of soul rings was carried out, he would take advantage of this popularity to carry out the plan. Who knew that the arrival of Douluo and Bai Shui would bring forward the implementation of this plan? This was also a good thing. Moreover, the identity of the god's messengers would greatly increase the success rate of Lin Feng's plan. Thinking about this, Lin Feng asked Tang San to immediately gather the upper echelons of the Great Xia Empire and prepare for a meeting. This plan was too big. If Lin Feng did it alone, it would take a lot of time and the efficiency would be slower. If he borrowed the power of the entire Great Xia Empire, the efficiency would definitely increase a lot. Of course, Lin Feng would not tell anyone about the core of this plan. He just changed the method to let the entire Great Xia Empire work for him. Just like this, Tang San quickly gathered the upper echelons of the Great Xia Empire. Just now, when Bai Luo and the others were talking to Tang San, they had actually used their divine power to isolate the movement. So at that time in the square, no one noticed, only Lin Feng knew. At this time, other than Tang San and Lin Feng, no one knew about the god's messengers. So when Tang San gathered everyone was slightly puzzled and did not know why. Chapter 544. For this meeting, Tang San gathered everyone over the phone and issued a level 4 administrative order. Administrative orders were divided into 5 levels. The higher the level, the more urgent it was. A level 5 generally meant that the Great Xia Empire was about to be destroyed. Although a level 4 was not that serious, it was still extremely important. Those who received the notice were required to immediately put down everything at hand and rush back to the Great Xia city. Tang San did not mention the specific situation. When everyone returned to the Great Xia city, they were all very puzzled. The location of the meeting was in the hall of the Great Xia Palace. This place had been transformed into a large auditorium, and the space had become very spacious. At this time, the upper echelons of the Great Xia Empire were gathered in the auditorium. It's a level 4 order. Do you know what it is? I don't know. Since the establishment of the empire, not even a level 2 order has been issued. This time, it's a level 4 order. Did something big happen? Something big? It shouldn't be. There's no movement outside. How could there be something big? Maybe there's a major result in the laboratory? That's possible. But what kind of result could make Alliance Master Tang issue a level 4 order? This is too rushed. In the hall, everyone was in a heated discussion, guessing what the reason was. After all, a level 4 order was too high. It had never appeared before, so they could not help but be surprised. Among them, the most guessed was that there was a new result in the laboratory. After all, this was the only thing they could think of. If there was a god coming to contact them, they would only feel that it was a fantasy. Just as everyone was discussing, Tang Xin walked out from the stage at the front of the hall. Everyone quiet down. I believe that everyone has a lot of doubts in their hearts for this sudden gathering. But what I want to say is that the importance of this matter is far beyond your imagination. When Tang San appeared, everyone had already quieted down. They were very curious about why Tang San had gathered them. Now, as his voice fell, they were even more curious. What exactly was the matter that made Tang San say such heavy words? The importance of this matter was far beyond their imagination. Just as she was thinking about this, Lin Feng walked out. Just an hour ago, an emissary from the realm of the gods came down and wanted to make contact with our Great Xia Empire. Lin Feng did not directly say that he was looking for Thanos. Instead, he used the country as a whole to give everyone a sense of participation. What? A divine envoy from the god realm? Oracle? How is this possible? Someone from the god realm actually came down to the lower realm. That's unbelievable. If Elder Lin hadn't said it, I would have thought that someone was messing with me. Everyone was shocked, and their scalps went numb. The god realm was the place Douluo, continents titled Douluo, and 100,000-year-old beasts wanted to go to, especially Tang Chun, who was in awe of the god realm. Because he had reached the limit of Douluo's world, he clearly knew how powerful the rules were. It was like an unbreakable wall in front of him, preventing him from moving forward. At this moment, someone actually came out of the wall, and he was eager to see this divine envoy. Most importantly, Lin Feng said that the divine envoy wanted to make contact with the Great Xia Empire. Their empire had just been established, and it had already alarmed the god realm not long ago. This meant that the Great Xia Empire was very powerful and extraordinary. As a member of the Great Xia Empire, everyone was extremely honored and in disbelief. Silence. The news from the god realm was too shocking. At this moment, the hall was already in an uproar. Lin Feng shouted in a low voice and suppressed the discussion. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on Lin Feng. They were eager to know the follow-up. Tang Chun asked anxiously, "Elder Lin, where's the divine envoy now?" While speaking, everyone present was looking around. Some even used their mental power to search the surroundings, as if trying to find the divine envoy. After all, Lin Feng had said that the divine envoy came from the lower realm to cooperate with them. At this moment, he should be in the Great Xia Palace. However, Lin Feng said the divine envoy left after a preliminary discussion with Alliance leader Tang. I think he's now confirming the cooperation. Maybe he'll come again tomorrow. This time, I've gathered everyone here to inform you of this matter so that you can be mentally prepared. At the same time, the cooperation between the Great Xia Empire and the divine envoy from the god realm is also an epic-making feat. When the time comes, we need to organize well and do what the divine envoy asked us to do. At the same time, we need to publicize this matter and let the entire mainland remember this moment. As Lin Feng's voice became more and more impassioned, everyone's hearts became more and more fervent. Even Tang San's heart was stirred. In particular, the phrase, "let the entire continent remember this moment," moved everyone. This action was equivalent to writing a thick stroke in the history of the Great Xia Empire. This would be passed down through the ages. Even if tens of thousands of years had passed, everyone would know about today's events. Therefore, when Lin Feng said this, everyone's breathing quickened. Elder Lin, tell us what we should do. We'll definitely do it beautifully, Elder Jean Huan said with confidence. Yes, yes. Elder Lin, tell us what we should do. Elder Fei Ying also asked. Before these hidden powerhouses came out, their thoughts were very simple, and that was to increase their strength and strive to break through level 100. Now, after coming out, their goal was no longer just that. In addition to a breakthrough in strength, leaving one's name in history was also very tempting. At this moment, as long as they participated in the cooperation between the Great Xia Empire and the God Realm, they would definitely leave their names in history. In fact, it was not only them. If you randomly found someone and told them that they could leave their name in history, it would be incomparably exciting. For a moment, everyone was incomparably excited, expressing that this matter must be done beautifully. At this moment, the hall was noisy, but Lin Feng was not angry. After all, this matter was too shocking. This kind of reaction was quite normal. Lin Feng was already prepared for this. With a flip of his hand, pieces of paper appeared in the air and slowly fell into everyone's hands. At the same time, he said, "This is the general plan for this cooperation. Take a look. I've already told Alliance Leader Tang the specifics. When the time comes, he will arrange your tasks in detail." As Lin Feng spoke, everyone grabbed the paper and read it. Everyone present was a powerhouse, and there was not much content written on the paper. They finished reading it very quickly. At this moment, Tang Sen also spoke. The overall situation is very simple. First of all, don't deliberately spread this news. Wait until the cooperation is completely confirmed before starting to publicize it. Every city in the 2 states must maintain a smooth broadcast. Also, Tang Sen explained in detail, slowly laying out the entire plan. Although there was no way to tell everyone what to do, the tasks of each branch were clearly explained. These were all told by Lin Feng when the two of them were waiting for everyone to gather. Lin Feng did not say it himself. On one hand, it was unnecessary. On the other hand, it was better for Tang San to say it. After all, he was the alliance leader. This would help strengthen his authority. Just like that, about half an hour passed. Tang San had more or less explained everything. The specific content was very simple. It was nothing more than the main city side guaranteeing the smooth progress of the cooperation. When the time came, forces from all over the continent would be gathered to watch the ceremony. As for the branch, it was mainly to prepare for the publicity. When the time came, they would immediately start a large-scale publicity campaign. Also, there was a need for special control near Great Xia City. They had to be prepared for all contingencies. This time, the people from the heavenly realm could allow Lin Feng to promote himself and deify himself. This was based on the fact that the cooperation was a good thing. What if this cooperation was a bad thing? Therefore, Lin Feng had to be prepared for both sides. Even if something happened, he would not be caught off guard. Very quickly, after the instructions were given, everyone dispersed and went to make their own preparations. Although they were excited, the problem was that the oracle was not here at the moment. Therefore, they had to make the necessary preparations first. Tang Sin told them that as long as the oracle confirmed the details of the cooperation, everyone would definitely be invited to watch the ceremony. This would satisfy their curiosity about the gods. That's right. It was not reverence, but curiosity. Under the subtle influence of Lin Feng's fair and just policy, the concept of equality gradually became deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even these people themselves did not realize that after the initial shock, there was not much reverence left in the eyes of the gods in front of them. This was a good sign. At least from Lin Feng's point of view, this was the decline of an old era and the beginning of a new era, and he had to take most of the credit for the replacement of the old with the new. Although the impact on Lin Feng was very small now, he believed that when the power of faith appeared, this would become the hidden power that would help him the most. Just as the Great Xia Empire was actively preparing, on the other side, the siblings by Luo and by Shui had already arrived at a valley. After being rejected by Lin Feng, they were now communicating with the God Realm to report the current situation. Lord Sea God, Lin Feng, said that we have to tell them about the cooperation first. Only then will they allow us to meet Thanos. Otherwise, we will not meet anyone. As the mission they received was to interact with Lin Feng and Tang San in a friendly manner, Bai Luo did not force them at all. Haha! As expected of the person I thought highly of, such courage. The sea god was not unhappy at all. Instead, he was very pleased to be able to reject a god so calmly. Such courage was rare and precious. And such an outstanding soul master was about to inherit his sea god deity position. How could Poseidon not be happy? Lord Sea God, this Lin Feng is courageous, but his attitude is tough. We can't complete our mission. Bai Shui muttered. The sea god replied, just tell them directly. Anyway, this matter will be known sooner or later. Lin Feng, Tang San, and Thanos had a very special relationship, especially Lin Feng. He might even be Thanos' son. Hence, if they told the two of them, it would not affect them too much. Hearing this, Bai Luo did not have to be in a difficult position anymore. He just had to go back and confess to them directly. The God Realm came with friendly intentions, so the final result should be good. Thinking about this, Bai Luo and Bai Shui made a decision and quickly returned to Great Xia City. However, the two of them did not immediately look for Tang San or Lin Feng because it was already nighttime. They had learned the etiquette of Douluo's mainland. Usually they would not visit at night. It was better to wait until the next morning. Coincidentally, they had not experienced the scenery of Great Xia City yet. Today, they could have a good time in the city. Thinking about this, the two of them gradually became addicted to the scenery of Great Xia City's night market. It could be said that because of Lin Feng, Great Xia City's night market was the only one in the entire Douluo's mainland. In order to show the uniqueness of Great Xia City, he had many things here that other cities did not have. For example, amusement parks, lantern markets, sparring squares, large-scale theaters, and so on. Many entertainment venues had opened up in Great Xia City. Furthermore, these things were vigorously promoted by the government. There were all kinds of favorable policies, and in addition, the people liked them. Originally, Great Xia City's population had all left because of the war. However, in a short span of a month, it had become a megacity with a population of 1 million. Generally speaking, there was no city on Douluo's mainland that could accommodate a population of 1 million. However, Great Xia City was specially planned by Lin Feng. From the beginning of the planning, his standard for the city was based on a population of 5 million. Although the current infrastructure was only enough for 5 million people to live, the planning was already done. If the population increased in the future, they could continue to expand. In any case, everything was in order and there would not be any chaos. The main roads of Great Xia City were all 10 meters wide. Even a few horse carriages could travel side by side at the same time. Walking on the busy streets, the two siblings Bai Shui and Bai Luo were really enjoying themselves. Gongxin City was also bustling. However, it was mainly bustling with merchants and many soul masters who came to buy weapons. On the other hand, Great Xia City was bustling with commoners. The streets and alleys were filled with people with smiles on their faces. Soul masters and commoners could live together on equal footing without any barriers. This kind of city was too beautiful. In the God Realm, they had never seen such a scene. However, while walking in the city, the two siblings discovered that there were already rumors in the city that the God Realm's divine emissaries wanted to cooperate with the Great Xia Empire. Some said that the Great Xia Empire was an empire chosen by God and was destined to last forever. Some said that Great Xia City had been blessed by God, and those who settled here could awaken their martial souls. There were even more ridiculous rumors that someone in Great Xia City had become a god. In any case, Bai Luo and Bai Shui knew that Lin Feng and Tang San had spread the news about them coming to the lower realm. Regarding this, the two of them were not angry at all. Instead, they were very happy. This meant that the other party did not hate them or anything. From this situation, Lin Feng and the others were even willing to cooperate with them. It seemed that when they visited tomorrow, the matter of cooperation should be settled. Chapter 545. As gods, by Luo and by Shui's spiritual power was so strong that they did not need to sleep. The two of them played in the city for a night. The next morning, at 8 o'clock, they started walking towards the Great Xia Palace. On Lin Feng's side, his spiritual power was also very strong. Although he could not stay awake all the time, he could sleep once a month. Yesterday evening, he sensed that Bai Luo and Bai Shui had arrived in the Great Xia Palace. Out of caution, Lin Feng kept his spiritual power on them to prevent any accidents from happening. After all, he was not sure of their motives, so it was necessary to be cautious. As for his spiritual power, it was not directly locked onto a person, but a general area. This area was specially probed by Lin Feng yesterday. It was a safe distance. After all, the other party was a god. Before he knew their background, if he was too deliberate, he would be easily discovered. This morning, Tang San, Lin Feng, Ning Fengji, Dai Mubai, and the rest of the upper echelons of the Great Xia Empire were all waiting in the hall of the inner palace. Lin Feng had told them that the god's messenger would definitely come today. This was not nonsense, but it would definitely happen. Because if Bai Luo and Bai Shui did not come, Lin Feng would do it himself. That's right, he would do it himself. Previously, Lin Feng had not thought of this, but the arrival of the two siblings made him perfect the plan in his heart. Even if the god's messenger failed, he would be able to put on a good show. After all, the people on Douluo's mainland had not really seen a god. With his current abilities, he could pretend. Of course, this was a last resort. It would be best if a real god's messenger came. Just as he was thinking about this, Lin Feng suddenly looked in front of him, because he sensed that Bai Luo and Bai Shui were coming. The two of them crossed the stairs and square in front of them, almost teleporting over. Why was it almost? Because Lin Feng did not feel the slightest fluctuation in space. This meant that they did not really teleport, but their speed was too fast. Actually, Lin Feng was very curious about how the other party used his divine power to create such an effect. However, because he couldn't sense it with his spiritual energy at close range, he didn't know what had happened. Feng Gu, is the oracle here? Tang Xin asked. Probably. Lin Feng did not give a definite answer. After all, his current identity was not Thanos, but the much weaker Lin Feng. Just as Lin Feng finished speaking, Bai Luo and Bai Shui's voices were heard from the outside world. Deity Realms Bai Luo, Bai Shui, is here to pay a visit. Hearing this, everyone in the hall looked at each other, their faces full of joy. The oracle was here, he was really here. Although Lin Feng and Tang San had talked about the oracle before, they still didn't believe it until they saw it with their own eyes. Now that the oracle had really appeared, they were eager to see what the god looked like. Everyone, let's go out and welcome the oracle, Lin Feng said with a smile. As he spoke, he stood up and walked out with Tang San at the head of the table. As the deputy chief, Ning Fengji consciously did not snatch Lin Feng's position because he knew that Lin Feng was not representing himself, but Thanos. Just like that, the group split into two rows and arrived at the small square together. When they were about to see Bai Luo and Bai Shui, other than Tang San and Lin Feng, everyone else was very excited. But soon they calmed down a little. This was because Bai Luo and Bai Shui were the same as them. They had two eyes and one mouth. There was nothing special about them. Moreover, the two of them did not radiate any light. Other than being a little handsome and pretty, they were very ordinary. In an instant, the original sense of mystery disappeared by more than half. Humans were like that. They were either afraid, worshipped, or curious about the unknown. However, once this mysterious veil was lifted, that kind of emotion would be reduced by a lot. Therefore, when Lin Feng was deifying himself, he paid special attention to the sense of mystery. This way, he could achieve twice the effect with half the effort. The two oracles have graced the Great Xia Empire with your presence, Lin Feng said with a smile. To be honest, Lin Feng's attitude now was very different from yesterday. Bai Luo and Bai Shui were both stunned. However, After asking around last night, they also knew that the Great Xia Empire was welcoming of their arrival. Perhaps it was because they had discussed it the day before, so their attitude had changed. Thinking about it, Douluo also smiled and said, "The Great Xia Alliance has unified the Douluo continent. This kind of great achievement is also very admirable." Hearing this, everyone's faces were full of smiles. This was a compliment from a god. It was very useful to them. Even Lin Feng was a little surprised. Although he had told Tang Sen that gods were just ordinary people who were slightly stronger than normal people. But even though he said that, deep down he still felt that God should be one level higher than them. After all, compared to soul power, God power was on another level. The two were completely different. At this moment, Douluo's words made everyone feel that they were also ordinary people. Both sides exchanged a few words and introduced themselves to each other. Soon, Lin Feng stretched out his hand and said, "Esteemed guests, please come in. We have set up a banquet inside to specially entertain you." "Then it would be impolite of us to refuse," Douluo said with a smile. Meanwhile, Bai Shui's face was full of joy. The food in the lower realm was much more abundant than in the god realm. Moreover, there were all kinds of novel foods that made them forget to return. Since the Great Xia Palace was hosting a banquet to entertain them, there would definitely be a lot of good food. Thinking about this, Bai Shui was full of anticipation. Although this trip to the lower realm was said to be the mission of the two of them, Douluo was the main lead. However, the main person was Douluo, and Bai Shui was just a support. Soon, the group of people came to the main hall. The banquet had already been prepared, and both sides took their seats. "Both of you came from the god realm. I represent the Great Xia Empire to give you a toast." As the leader of the alliance, Tang San was the first to stand up and give a toast to Douluo and Bai Shui. "Please." Douluo did not decline and drank a cup with Tang San. Then, both sides started to have a formal conversation. "Regarding the matter of cooperation, I wonder what the two of you have thought about it," Lin Feng asked. At this moment, everyone else held their breaths and did not dare to disturb the conversation. Douluo nodded and said, "We have already asked the sea god, and he said that he can tell you the details of the cooperation." This was actually within Lin Feng's expectations. He guessed that the people from the god realm came with good intentions, and there was a high chance that they would agree to such a small matter. "Then I will congratulate our cooperation in advance." Lin Feng stood up and smiled. What he meant was that he was willing to cooperate with the god realm. On Douluo's side, he was not stupid and quickly understood Lin Feng's hidden meaning. He said directly, "Because this cooperation is very important, not too many people can know about it. Therefore, Elder Lin, I can only tell you at the moment. If you think that the cooperation is feasible, please pass the message to Thanos." Douluo did not hide this from the others, and said it directly. Hearing this, the others did not have much of a change in expression, because Lin Feng had already given them a heads up, and this was within their expectations. At this moment, Lin Feng stood up and smiled. "No problem. As long as the cooperation is beneficial to both of us, I will definitely pass the message to Elder Mia, and he will be happy to cooperate with the god realm. Then this way, please." Douluo reached out and pointed to the side. Lin Feng nodded and walked to the side with Douluo. At the same place, Tang San and the rest accompanied Bai Shui to eat, and their faces were full of smiles. After the two of them came to the side, Douluo first set up a barrier, then went straight to the point. "Elder Lin, your Marvel family is very special. I'm not sure if you know about this." "Of course I know about this." Lin Feng nodded and said, "Our Marvel family is an extremely long hidden family, and we have many secret techniques, which is why we are so powerful, and we have also come into contact with the god's inheritance." What Lin Feng said was basically the kind of rumors in Douluo's continent, and many people knew about it. However, he had a feeling that the special things that Douluo was talking about were not just these. The Marvel family is powerful, there's no doubt about that. But what I want to say is that your family leader, Thanos, seems to be extremely talented in the space aspect of soul skills. In the space aspect, this kind of talent seems to be beyond the meaning of Douluo's continent. How much does Elder Lin know about this special aspect? Douluo's eyes focused, and his tone became more serious. Douluo's continent was limited by the rules, and there were great restrictions on space-type soul beasts and soul masters. On the other hand, Thanos' space ability was simply ridiculously strong, and he could even isolate himself from Douluo's continent, and even the Origin could not sense it. This kind of ability was completely beyond the level of Douluo's continent, so Douluo's words were also a kind of test. This, I'm not very sure. After all, Mr. Destroy's strength is too strong, and I can't understand it at all. Lin Feng shook his head. On the surface, his expression was calm, as if he did not care about Douluo's question. However, in his heart, he was a little shocked. If Douluo did not mention it, Lin Feng would not have realized that his space ability seemed to be too strong in Douluo's continent. Back then, he relied on his own space ability, and if BB Dong had not saved him, he would have killed Thousand Stream in front of Martial Spirit City. From Thousand Stream's reaction, he should not have seen such a strong space ability before. Back then, Lin Feng killed the Qian Kuan Blood Shadow Beast in the extreme north, and it was extremely special, and it had mutated. Its space ability was extremely strong, and it could be said that it was one of the top in the entire continent. However, even for such a special soul beast, its space ability was nothing compared to the current Thanos. It was like comparing the bright moon to a firefly. Could it be that the realm of gods had noticed him because of this? But this should not be. His space ability was strong, but it could not break the boundary of Douluo's continent, and it should not be known by the realm of gods. Just as he was thinking about this, Douluo was also very shocked. Previously, out of courtesy, he did not take the initiative to check on Lin Feng's strength. However, just now, when Lin Feng mentioned the word strength, Douluo subconsciously checked on Lin Feng. However, he realized that he could not see through it at all. It was as if there was a layer of special film blocking it, and his divine power could not see through it at all. Lin Feng actually sensed Douluo's spying, but he did not say anything and pretended not to know. After all, his identity as Lin Feng was only a titled Douluo, and his strength should not be discovered. As for whether Douluo would get to the bottom of it, Lin Feng was not worried about this at all. After all, checking on someone's strength was not very polite, and the other party would not ask. Moreover, he mainly relied on the strength of his own soul power to block other people's spying. 4 soul masters like them, who had learned how to control soul power, their bodies would consciously form a soul power barrier. Not only him, but Tang San, Ning Fengji, and Han Yifeng also had it. On one hand, it was to cultivate soul power, and on the other hand, it was to be vigilant and prevent others from spying on them. Therefore, Lin Feng's concealment of his strength was not special, and he would not be noticed. While thinking about this, Douluo had already come back to his senses. He suppressed the shock in his heart and said, "It's okay if you don't know. The purpose of the realm of gods is very simple. Thanos' spatial ability is very strong, and he might be able to communicate with other worlds. The realm of gods wants to use this ability to discover other worlds." Douluo had 2 plans when he came over. The first was that Lin Feng knew that Thanos came from another world. This way, he could reveal everything. At this time, Lin Feng obviously did not know about this. He was going to carry out the second plan, which was to change the way he said it, which was to say that Thanos' spatial ability is special. Mr. Destroy can communicate with other worlds? Lin Feng asked calmly. He did not know about this at all. Lin Feng had tried to use the spatial ability to travel to the border of the Douluo world. However, there was a thick layer of barrier there, and he could not pass through it at all. Therefore, at this time, he was very curious about what Douluo said. On Douluo's side, he still thought that Lin Feng did not understand the meaning of this matter. He quickly explained, "There are many worlds like the Douluo world, and the realm of gods is a place that is specially in charge of these worlds. However, there are too many lower realms, and the realm of gods has not found all the worlds. Thanos' ability is special, and he might be able to discover new worlds. Therefore, we are looking for Thanos to seek cooperation." At this point, Douluo could be considered to have completely expressed his words. "I see." Lin Feng nodded and said. At this time, he also understood that the realm of gods should have some special method to strengthen one's spatial ability and then enter other worlds. These were all guesses that Lin Feng made based on Luo's words. Although it was not completely accurate, other than the core that Thanos came from another world that he did not know, the rest of the guesses were mostly correct. Chapter 546. Right now, Lin Feng wanted to get more information from Luo. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to agree, but continued to ask. Divine Representative Bai, since the cooperation involves entering another world, I wonder if you can tell me about the situation in the other worlds? This way, I can better report to Mr. Destroy. Lin Feng was also very curious about the other worlds, but he did not know about these. Every world is different, and the rules of the world are different. Some are similar to Douluo's continent, while others are very strange. As for the specific situation, it is not something that can be explained in a few words. You need to experience it for yourself. Also, the world that Thanos can communicate with is more special, and we have no way to pry into it at the moment. These are not important situations, so Luo said all of them together. When Lin Feng heard this, he was silent and nodded in his heart. Lin Feng had some guesses about the situation in the other worlds, and what Luo said was similar to what he had guessed. Then, he continued to ask, then what are your requirements and conditions? Cooperation was definitely something that would benefit both sides. Otherwise, why would the celestial realm look for Thanos if there were no benefits? Therefore, Lin Feng had to ask clearly about these things. Otherwise, if they did not come to an agreement, there might be problems in the end. This is not something that I can discuss. We need Lord Sea God to talk to Thanos, Luo said. Luo said, however, I can guarantee that this matter will not affect the Great Xia Empire in the slightest. Furthermore, it will only benefit Thanos. From these words, Lin Feng knew that Luo was just a messenger. The specific details would have to be discussed by the person behind the scenes. If we agree to cooperate, what can we get? Lin Feng asked the last question that he wanted to know at the moment. As for himself, Lin Feng was very curious about this so-called alternate world. However, there was a prerequisite for this curiosity, and that was that he had to be curious about it while ensuring his own safety. Otherwise, wouldn't he be a fool if he still went despite knowing the danger? If you're talking about what you can get from the other worlds, I can't guarantee that. But if you're asking about what the celestial realm can give you, then it's very simple. Divine power. Luo extended a finger and said, as long as Thanos cooperates with the divine realm, we will think of a way to give Thanos divine power and let him ascend to the divine realm. Transmitting divine power to the lower realms was not an easy task. Due to the obstruction of the realm wall, transmitting divine power to the lower realm would consume a lot of energy. When the Sea God dynasty transmitted divine power to the lower realm, it also consumed a lot of energy. And that was because Poseidon himself had built a formation in Douluo's world. Without this formation, it would be difficult for Poseidon to transmit his divine power. That's it. Lin Feng frowned slightly. Was this the so-called benefit? This was too perfunctory, wasn't it? Divine power, to the current Lin Feng, other than allowing him to ascend to the divine realm, had no other use. But regarding ascending to the divine realm, even without divine power, he had made sufficient preparations and was confident that he could rely on his own strength to become a god. After all, the divine power that came from the sea god's affinity was enough for him to use as a catalyst. Hence, at this moment, when he heard the benefits that Luo mentioned, he felt that it was too little. On the other hand, Luo thought that Lin Feng did not know about the benefits of divine power, and immediately explained, divine power can allow a soul master to increase his strength quickly and even ascend to the divine realm. The most important thing is that the amount of divine power that we can give is not little. Not only can it allow Thanos to ascend to the divine realm, it can also allow at least 5 other people to ascend together. And by Luo's worldview, people from the lower realms should really want to ascend to the divine realm. As for the divine power, they would definitely want to get their hands on it. Lin Feng probably did not understand the effects of divine power. After Luo explained it clearly, he would definitely agree. However, just as Bai Luo was thinking about this, Lin Feng said calmly, "I know all that you said. So what you mean is that divine power is all the sincerity that the divine realm can offer." Bai Luo could clearly see that Lin Feng was dissatisfied. Divine power was not enough to satisfy him. But at the same time, he was also very confused. What was Lin Feng thinking? For people from the lower realms, shouldn't divine power be the most precious thing? That was energy that could allow people to ascend to the divine realm. Other than that, Bai Luo really could not think of anything else that was more attractive to people from the lower realms than divine power. Thinking about it, Bai Luo asked directly, "Elder Lin, for soul masters from the lower realms, divine power is already the best thing. Other than that, there is nothing else that can surpass it. Are there no godly items, godly medicines, or the like?" Lin Feng said, "Mr. Destroy told us that we can ascend to the divine realm with our own strength. We don't need any external help. So, if you can't offer anything else, Mr. Destroy might not be very satisfied. After all, divine power is not that important to us." Hearing this, Bai Luo was shocked. Before he came to the lower realms, the gods had told him that Thanos was very special and that he needed to be treated with caution, but they did not know the specific situation. But now, Lin Feng actually said that they could ascend to the divine realm with their own strength. And from his tone, it sounded very normal. But in Bai Luo's worldview, it was very difficult for people from the lower realms to ascend to the divine realm. It might take tens of thousands of years for such a genius to appear. Thanos was very special. Was that why he was so special? Otherwise, why would the entire divine realm value him so much? Previously, when the divine kings of the divine realm held a meeting, those who were called were the gods with divine thrones. Priests like Bai Luo and Bai Shui were not qualified to participate in the meeting. So, at this time, he had such a guess. Just as Bai Luo was stunned, Lin Feng continued, "Oh right, if the divine realm specifically gives us divine power, that divine power should have been processed, right? It will make it easier for us to ascend to the divine realm." "Ah, that's right." Bai Luo came back to his senses and said, "Elder Lin, it seems like you have a certain understanding of the divine realm. The divine power that we give you will be personally blessed by the divine king when the time comes. It will make it easier for you to ascend to the divine realm." Lin Feng's expression did not change as he said, "After you ascend, your strength will be very weak and you won't have a divine throne, right?" That's right." Bai Luo nodded and said, "After you ascend, you will become like me, a priest of the divine realm. Although you won't have a divine throne, your strength will still be very strong." In the divine realm, those who had a divine throne were called gods. Those who did not have a divine throne were called divine people. As for those who were more powerful, they were known as divine officials. In other words, everyone could be called priests. This was because the people in the divine realm were all very strong. At least, they were much stronger than those in the lower realm. And what Bai Luo said about the priests being strong was also the truth. This was because among the gods, not all of them had strong combat power. Some of the gods' divine thrones did not belong to the battle system. Although these gods had strength, they were weaker than many priests. Bai Luo and Bai Shui were the best among the priests. Their strength was even close to some second-level gods. Gods without a divine throne are too weak. Lin Feng shook his head. Although he had not become a god, Lin Feng knew that a divine throne was the foundation to receive the power of faith. If you didn't even have a divine throne, your foundation would be too weak. No matter how strong you were, you wouldn't be that strong. Just like Bai Luo in front of him, Lin Feng was sure that this guy didn't have a divine throne. His strength wouldn't be that strong. With Lin Feng's current strength, if he went all out, Bai Luo wouldn't be able to last more than one round. The main reason was that the recent increase in strength of the 1,000 trickery ruler brought about a huge increase in Lin Feng's strength. Otherwise, half a month ago, he would still need around 10 rounds to be confident of winning against Bai Luo. Bai Luo opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. Bai Luo didn't know what to say. He was a god official from the god realm, but he was being looked down upon by a soul master in the lower realm. Lin Feng smiled. Priest Bai, I'm not saying that you're weak. Don't take it to heart. Bai Luo was speechless. This made him feel even worse. Lin Feng's words were simply looking down on his mother and opening the door for him. After a few seconds, Bai Luo came back to his senses and said, Elder Lin, let's not talk about God power for now. I'll give feedback on this. When the time comes, Thanos can talk to the sea god personally. After a pause, Bai Luo continued, So now, our cooperation is considered to have reached a preliminary agreement? Hearing this, Lin Feng smiled. That's right. The cooperation is considered to have reached a preliminary agreement. Today, Priest Bai, go back and discuss with the Divine Realm. I'll also look for Mr. Destroy to pass on this matter. Then, we'll confirm it one last time. Then give us 3 days. We'll announce this matter to the entire continent and let all the forces in the continent come to watch the ceremony. When the time comes, Mr. Destroy will talk about cooperation with the Divine Realm. This isn't too good. Bai Luo was a little confused. Lin Feng's words were too sudden. He wasn't mentally prepared at all and was directly stunned. What's not good about it? This is very good. Not only will it promote the Divine Realm, but the rule of the Great Xia Empire will also be more stable. This is a win-win situation. The cooperation between the Divine Realm and the Great Xia Empire was a very important part of Lin Feng's plan. This would show the outside world that the establishment of the Great Xia Empire was approved by the Divine Realm. On the other hand, this was also the core of Lin Feng's plan. It was foreshadowing the complete deification of the Marvel family in the future. After all, Thanos was an existence that spoke to the Divine Realm on an equal footing. With this situation, deification would be very easy. All right, Priest Bai, the food will get cold if you don't eat. Let's go back and continue eating. Seeing that Bai Luo seemed to have something to say, Lin Feng immediately smiled and said. Seeing this, Bai Luo couldn't refute and could only follow. To be honest, Bai Luo was still a little aggrieved in this conversation. After all, from the beginning to the end, Lin Feng had been in charge. Bai Luo wanted to change this situation, but Lin Feng's every question was too sharp. He didn't have a chance to take back the right to speak. Just like this, with a trace of aggrievement, Bai Luo and the others finished this banquet and then left. In the next hour, of course, Lin Feng pretended to look for Thanos. As for the others, they began to gather all the strong people on the continent to prepare for the ceremony in 3 days. This was a collaboration between the Divine Realm and the Great Xia Empire. When the rumors spread, countless people were shocked. Now that the officials had confirmed it, the entire continent was in an uproar. Even on Sea God's Island, Poseidon and the others were extremely shocked. The Divine Realm had sent a priest to the Divine Realm and was looking for a collaboration with the Great Xia Empire. This news directly overturned Poseidon's worldview. She didn't waste any time. The moment she received the news, she rushed to the Great Xia city. There were many people like her in the continent, and all of them rushed to the Great Xia city. There were even some hidden strong people that Lin Feng didn't discover. These people didn't come out when the Great Xia Empire was first established. However, as the news of the Divine Realm's arrival spread, these people couldn't sit still and came over. On the other side, Bai Luo continued to communicate with the Divine Realm and reported the situation. This time, it wasn't just Poseidon who was listening to the report. Lai Yin and Azure Deity were also listening. That Lin Feng actually thinks that the divine power isn't good enough? Interesting, very interesting. Lai Yin said with a smile. Azure Deity nodded and said, I don't understand this Douluo world anymore. That Thanos actually thinks that it's easy to ascend to the divine realm. I really don't know where his courage comes from. It seemed that none of the divine legacies in Douluo world had been inherited by Thanos. If he wanted to ascend, he would have to condense a divine seed again. And to condense a brand new deity position, that was extremely difficult. Sea God shook his head and laughed. That Thanos' ambition is higher than the sky. When I condensed the Sea God seed, it took me 1,000 years. It's good that Thanos is 100 years old. He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Yes, this kid is thinking too much. Lion also laughed. At this time, Azure Deity said, However, The world behind Thanos must be very special. If it really is a new place and is of great help to the divine realm, it's not impossible to give him a divine weapon. The divine weapons that the gods of the divine realm were talking about were, of course, not the fakes in Douluo world. They were real divine weapons. Perhaps it wasn't at the level of the Divine Realm Committee's divine mirror, but it was slightly weaker, such as a level 1 god's weapon. That level of item could be given. That guy has to be talented enough. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to use all of his strength with such a powerful divine weapon. Lai Yan's words were reasonable. If Thanos wasn't worthy of such a powerful divine weapon, it would be a waste to give it to him. Let's wait until we see Thanos. That's true. The few of them nodded and quickly passed their thoughts to Bai Luo and Bai Shui. Chapter 547. That night, Lin Feng and Bai Luo met again to exchange information. Finally, they agreed to work together in 3 days. Just like that, time passed slowly. In Great Xia City, under Tang San's arrangements, the entire city was welcoming the arrival of this conference. On the continent of Douluo, almost all the Soul Master organizations were shocked by the news of the collaboration. This was a god from the godly realm. It was too shocking that he was going to work with the Great Xia Empire. Countless Soul Masters yearned for it and rushed to Grand Xia City, one after another. From his second day onwards, the higher-ups of the Great Xia Empire and some titled Douluo powerhouses arrived at Great Xia City. This was especially so for Po Zidi. She was one of the first few people to arrive. She was eager to see the god. However, Bai Luo and Bai Shui didn't want to make a big deal out of it. They hid in the city so that no one could see them. This was a pity for the Soul Masters who arrived early. However, they were full of anticipation when they thought about how they would be able to see the god in 2 days. During this time, Lin Feng wasn't idle either. He had been secretly arranging things. Once the collaboration was confirmed, the entire continent would start to publicize it. However, something unexpected happened while Lin Feng was doing this. Someone broke through in the cultivation hall in the east of Great Xia City. The cultivation hall was a place that used soul tool technology to accelerate the condensation of soul power. Cultivating in there could increase one's cultivation speed by about 30%. Ordinary Soul Masters had to pay contribution points if they wanted to cultivate in there. Soul Masters who held positions in the Great Xia Alliance would be given different amounts of cultivation time each month, depending on the rank of their position. Of course, if one was a titled Doa and became an elder of the Alliance, they could cultivate for free. Because the cultivation hall was huge, there were many people here. Almost every day, someone would break through. If it were an ordinary person, Lin Feng wouldn't have cared. However, this person was the Golden Ring Doa Hong Yifeng. Douluo was a titled battle pet warrior at the 98th rank. He was at the 99th rank, the peak of Douluo. A breakthrough of this level was still very powerful. Soul power surged throughout the entire Great Xia City, and all Soul Masters who were Soul Sages and above could sense this undulation. This was especially true for the other soul cultivators in the hall. Faced with such an enormous amount of pressure, the weaker soul cultivators were unable to cultivate. What a strong soul power undulation. It's coming from the direction of the cultivation hall. Who broke through? Yeah, isn't this soul power undulation too strong? Could it be the might of a god? Within the city, the slightly stronger soul cultivators were all discussing this matter as they hurried towards the cultivation hall. In particular, the higher-ups of the Great Xia Empire, such as Tang San and Tang Chun, were the first to rush over. Even Bai Luo and Bai Shui, who were playing in the city, were attracted by this fluctuation. Of course, the two of them didn't go over directly. They only watched from afar. When Elder Golden Hoop broke through, there was a huge commotion. However, he quickly retracted his soul power undulations. Evidently, he had some control over his own body. Following this, a burst of carefree laughter could be heard from the hall. In the next second, Hong Yifeng flew out of the hall and arrived at a small plaza in front of him. At the same time, Tang Chun, Ning Fengji, Bai Shuyang, and the others all gathered around to congratulate him. Elder Hong, you've made another step forward. You've broken through to the peak of rank 99, Douluo. Congratulations. Old Hong, you actually broke through faster than me. This is really unexpected. Congratulations, Elder Hong, for breaking through to rank 99. The Great Xia Empire's strength has increased yet again. Elder Hong. Hong Yifeng was an elder of the Great Xia Empire. Furthermore, he was at the peak of rank 99, Duo. His status was extremely high. Right now, those who came to congratulate him were either strong or had a high status. Some of the weaker ones didn't even dare to come forward because they weren't qualified. There were also external experts like Bai Saishi. Although they weren't close to Hong Yifeng, they still came to congratulate him. Of course, Lin Feng also came to congratulate Hong Yifeng on his breakthrough. To be honest, this breakthrough was too sudden. Lin Feng had some understanding of these people. When he first discovered them, they had all been stuck at their respective ranks for a long time. They didn't have any hope of breaking through in a short period of time. Over the years, because they had become elders of the Great Xia Alliance, they had obtained many internal resources. This was why their strength had increased so quickly. However, this speed was compared to before. In reality, it was still extremely slow for Lin Feng. He estimated that it would take 10 years for him to break through. Now, Hong Yifeng had broken through early. It could only be said that his talent was extremely outstanding. It had exceeded Lin Feng's expectations. Thank you all for your congratulations. I just broke through by luck. Hong Yifeng smiled and cupped his hands. To be honest, his breakthrough this time was really due to luck. Half a day ago, when he was cultivating, he suddenly recalled the battle between Thanos and Qin Douluo. Those scenes flowed through his mind and caused Hong Yifeng to enter a state of epiphany. He broke through in an instant. Luckily, the battle with Elder Mia gave me an epiphany. Otherwise, it would have taken me at least 5 years to break through. Hong Yifeng looked at Lin Feng and said gratefully, Elder Hong is talented and intelligent. He will succeed sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. Lin Feng also smiled. Everyone chatted for a while. Then, Tang Sen laughed loudly and said, Today, Elder Hong of the Great Xia Empire has broken through. This is a joyous occasion. The entire city should celebrate. Originally, the 3 days of celebration in the Great Xia Empire was launched after the cooperation between the realm of the gods and the Great Xia Empire. At that time, there would be a banquet in the entire city and everyone would be invited. Now that Hong Yifeng had broken through to rank 99, it was a pleasant surprise. It just so happened that today was the start of the celebration. Just like that, the entire Great Xia Empire celebrated. All kinds of goods in the Alliance's shops were sold at a 30% discount. Even missions were subsidized with contribution points. There were specially arranged banquets everywhere in the city. Food and drinks were free. Furthermore, the entire city was also decorated. It was extremely festive. And it wasn't just the Great Xia Empire. All the branches of the Alliance were also celebrating. It was very festive. Of course, Lin Feng didn't let the entire continent follow the banquet for a few days, because that was too extravagant and the cost was too great. Although this amount of money was nothing to the Great Xia Empire, there was really no need to do so. Just like that, with the news of Hong Yifeng breaking through to rank 99 and the arrival of the gods in the Great Xia Empire, the flow of people in the Great Xia Empire increased greatly in a short 3 days. Not only soul masters from all over the world who heard the news came, but even some ordinary people nearby rushed over to join in the fun. The laws of the Great Xia Empire were very strict. In addition, when the country was just established, the enforcement was very strong. Very few people dared to go against it. Therefore, to ordinary people, their safety was extremely guaranteed. They didn't have to worry about danger at all. Very quickly, 3 days passed. On this day, it was time for the God Realm's divine envoy and Thanos to officially discuss the cooperation. The location of the cooperation was in the square in front of the Great Xia Palace. When the empire was first established, it was also here that they called for the world. With the foundation of the previous ceremony, the ceremony this time went on without a hitch. Early in the morning, countless soul masters of the Alliance had already started the final adjustments in the square. At around 8 in the morning, the soul masters in the city began to enter one after another and sat on the viewing platform. In the center, beside the round platform where the Rakshasa scimitar and angel sword were placed, a brand new square platform was built. There were tables and chairs on it, obviously used for negotiations. Half an hour later, the experts of the various forces who were watching the ceremony sat on the viewing platform. Ning Fengji had the experience of presiding over several large-scale scenes. This time, of course, the convention was commanded by Ning Fengji. Of course, as the deputy commander, Tang San had also shown his face many times before the start of the convention. At this time, Thanos and the God Realm's divine envoy hadn't arrived yet. Of course, everyone couldn't just sit there and do nothing. Under Ning Fengji's command, some soul masters brought some newly researched soul tools to the square to perform a demonstration to liven up the atmosphere. This was equivalent to promoting the products. Coincidentally, there were countless experts on the continent here. If these people knew about the products, they wouldn't have to worry about sales after the products were released in the future. All of this wasn't taught by Lin Feng. It was completely Ning Fengji's own idea. It had to be said that Ning Fengji's business acumen was extremely strong. No wonder the Seven Treasures Glaze sect was the richest sect on the continent. Just the taxes alone could support the Heavendo Empire's million-strong army. The soul tools that were being displayed now weren't all the works of grandmasters or Oscar. Many of them were made by their students. Over the years, soul tool technology had formed a complete set of theoretical knowledge. It had also become a brand new discipline that was being promoted across the continent. As the origin of all of this, Great Xia City should have become the place where soul tool technology was the strongest. Furthermore, there were hundreds of people who had learned soul tool technology. The products that were being displayed now were the result of the hard work of these hundreds of people. There were more than 30 types of soul tools. As the saying went, there was strength in numbers. In terms of soul tool technology, this saying was very important. Of course, geniuses were equally important. Because of geniuses like grandmasters and Oscar, the ceiling of soul tool technology was constantly being raised. In short, the development of soul tool technology in the Great Xia Empire was rapidly increasing. The 30 types of soul tool products in front of them were solid proof. Among these products, Lin Feng saw things like cars and washing machines. There were even some things that he had never seen before. Lin Feng exclaimed in surprise at the creativity of each of their ideas. In the crowd, Master, Oscar, and the others were also very excited. As they watched the products that they had participated in developing being displayed one by one, the various reactions of the crowd tugged at their heartstrings. After all, they were very happy that the products that they had developed were acknowledged by others. Ning Rongrong was standing beside them. At this moment, she pointed at the car and asked curiously, "Xiao Ao, that four-wheeled vehicle that looks like a horse carriage is very magical. It can actually move on its own." Oscar was very proud as he said, "Of course it's magical. Grandmasters and I researched it for 3 months before we came up with it. We call it a soul car, and it's driven by soul power. There are spiritual power connection points inside. Soul masters who are soul sages and above can use their spiritual power to control the soul car. Even soul masters who aren't soul sages can use their soul power to control it. The most important thing is that even ordinary people can use soul stones to control it. Although it's a little troublesome and requires both hands to control it, it's still a huge improvement compared to the horse carriages of the past. Their soul car was mainly developed for ordinary people. The cost of this thing wasn't high, so ordinary people could afford it. The only downside was that if you weren't a soul master, you would have to buy soul stones yourself to operate the soul car. This was an additional cost, and it was quite a lot. Therefore, ordinary people who didn't have money couldn't afford it. This soul car was mainly targeted at those who were slightly wealthier. Yes, it looks much more convenient than horse carriages. Furthermore, it's faster than horse carriages. If this soul car is popularized, horse carriages will probably disappear very soon. Ning Rongrong analyzed. Although Ning Rongrong wasn't as smart as Ning Fengji, she still had some foresight after such a long period of training. She could deduce that soul cars would soon replace horse carriages. Lin Feng smiled and praised. Rongrong's analysis is right. This is the trend. Continuous innovation in soul tool technology will not only bring convenience to the continent, it will also raise the level of society. When Lin Feng had established the Great Xia Empire, he had wanted to create a brand new era. The foundation for all of this was the continuous development and popularization of soul tool technology. Only then would the standard of society rise. In fact, the advancement of society and belief in a god were two completely opposite things. However, on the continent of Douluo, he had his own national conditions. Lin Feng's plans only had one ultimate goal, and that was to achieve a balance between the world, gods, and humans. In the end, he would walk a path of belief that was unique to Douluo. As he thought about this, Ning Rongrong couldn't hide the happiness on her face after being praised by Lin Feng. "It seems like I have good foresight," she said proudly. Time passed very quickly. After the introduction of more than 30 products, it was already 10 o'clock. Calculating the time, it was about time for the collaboration to begin. At this moment, Ning Fengji also received the notice. He directly went to the center of the plaza with Tang San. The two of them didn't stand. Instead, they flew in the air. This way, everyone could see them. Tang San could fly by himself. However, he wasn't flying by himself this time. Instead, he was wearing a brand new Wings of the Sky on his back like Ning Fengji. This was the 9th version of the Wings of the Sky. It was very light and comfortable. One could use soul power to activate it, as if they had a pair of wings themselves. His elegant posture attracted everyone's attention. Chapter 548. Looking at the two people flying lightly in the sky, Lin Feng ridiculed inwardly. These two guys could be considered the number one in the Douluo world. I believe that after today's meeting, the 9th edition of the Wings of the Sky will sell very well. Just as Lin Feng was thinking about this, Ning Fengji said loudly, "Today is the 60th day since the establishment of the Great Xia Empire. Just 2 days ago, Elder Hong broke through to level 99. Today, the emissary of the heavenly realm is going to establish a partnership with the Empire. The heavens are really protecting the Great Xia Empire. Today, let us celebrate the Great Xia Empire together. Celebrate the alliance." Following Ning Fengji's loud shout, everyone on the scene followed suit and shouted loudly. "Celebrate the Great Xia Empire. Celebrate the alliance. Celebrate the Great Xia Empire. Celebrate the alliance." The shouts were deafening and spread throughout the entire mountain. At the foot of the mountain, countless people were watching from afar. When the shouts were heard, they were unusually excited and followed suit. In an instant, the entire city was cheering for the Great Xia Empire. This kind of cohesiveness of the people's hearts made everyone present extremely shocked. Even by Luo and by Shui, who were secretly preparing to enter the stage, were also very surprised. One must know that in the heavenly realm, there were many books that recorded the history and culture of the world. However, there was no world that had such a huge cohesive force. The shock made the two of them stunned. Actually, it was not just the two of them. Ning Fengji, Tang San, and Hong Yifeng were also very surprised. They knew that the Great Xia Empire was developing very well, and the people were living and working in peace. Especially in the Great Xia city, everyone's face was brimming with happiness. However, the shouts at this moment were still beyond everyone's imagination. However, in Lin Feng's opinion, this was very normal. A few years ago, the people of Douluo world were still living in a feudal society. Now, the Great Xia Empire was promoting fairness and justice. In addition to countless measures that were beneficial to the people, the entire Douluo world had a completely new look. Comparing the two, the people still had a very strong sense of identity with the country. Of course, this kind of recognition would only last for 1 or 2 years. When fairness and impartiality became the norm, the contrast would not be so strong. This was especially true for the current generation of children. They grew up in a peaceful and friendly environment and did not know the situation of the past. These people would definitely be patriotic, but they would not feel it as deeply as the current generation. However, it was hard to say because the information on the Douluo continent was currently controlled by the Great Xia Empire. Under such circumstances, as long as they were willing to work hard, they could still guide the next generation correctly. These thoughts flashed through Lin Feng's mind. At this moment, after Ning Fengji had stirred up the atmosphere, everyone's blood was boiling as they cheered for the Empire's strength. After waiting for a minute or two, when everyone's emotions had calmed down a little, the wings on Tang San's back flapped slightly, and he flew up some distance. Then he said loudly, "Next, everyone will witness a historic scene in the history of the Douluo continent. The Divine Realm's divine envoy and the Great Xia Empire will discuss cooperation. Let's welcome him. The patriarch of the Marvel family, the imperial preceptor of the Great Xia Empire, and the elder of the Great Xia Alliance, Elder Thanos." As Tang San's low voice resounded through the audience, everyone's anticipation instantly exploded. Because of Lin Feng's previous plan, countless people had heard about Thanos and his appearance. Dressed in white and wearing a white mask, he gave people a mysterious feeling. However, although they had heard of him, most of the people present had never seen him and were extremely curious at this time. The moment Tang San's voice fell, on the high platform in the middle of the square, Thanos, dressed in white, had already appeared. A second ago, there was no one on the high platform, but the next second, in that instant, Thanos appeared. He did not speak. After appearing, he directly sat on the chair and waited quietly. At this moment, countless people's eyes converged on Thanos. So strong, it's actually teleportation. Thanos is really too strong. Yeah, I just blinked and Thanos appeared. This strength is heaven-defying. The most important thing is that there doesn't seem to be a trace of soul power fluctuation. This level of control is something I can only look up to. The Soul Masters in the square were all amazed by Thanos' strength. There was no jealousy in their eyes, only admiration and respect. After all, Thanos was too strong. He had conquered the entire continent a long time ago and had already convinced many people. After destroying the Martial Spirit Hall, his battle record was even more heaven-defying. In addition, Lin Feng's publicity and the current negotiation with the divine envoys on behalf of the Great Xia Empire. With these, some people had already equated Thanos with a god in their hearts. Although there were not many people like this, after today, as the news spread, Lin Feng only needed to secretly add fuel to the fire a few times and Thanos would be successfully deified. At this moment, Tang San continued shouting, "Next, let's invite the divine envoys from the divine realm, by Luo and by Shui." Although these two people were not very famous, the two words divine envoys were enough to make everyone quiet down. They all held their breaths and did not even dare to breathe loudly. They just waited quietly. These were the divine envoys from the divine realm. Everyone was extremely curious. After Tang San finished speaking, a ray of light suddenly flashed in front of the square. This ray of light was extremely fast. Soul Masters below, titled Douluo, did not know what happened at all. They did not even have a chance to react. Even titled Douluo could barely see that there seemed to be people in the white light. Those above rank 98 could vaguely see that there were two people, but the specific situation was unclear. Only Douluo, who was at the peak of rank 99, could see their clothes clearly. Of course, Lin Feng's words were clear. The two people in the light were by Luo and by Shui. The two of them moved quickly in the air and turned into a ray of light, appearing on the stage. Now, everyone could see the divine envoy's appearance clearly. Wow, is this the divine envoys? They're so handsome and beautiful. Some people were infatuated and cheered. They're so fast. It's like teleportation. Even Douluo, who is at the peak of rank 99, would find it difficult to achieve this speed. A titled Douluo analyzed. Divine envoys. At this moment, Thanos and the divine envoys appear at the same time. The atmosphere in the square became even more lively. Everyone was discussing. Some people were discussing how the cooperation would be in the future. Others were discussing how long the divine envoys would stay on the continent. There were even people discussing who was stronger between Thanos and the divine envoys. In any case, there were all kinds of discussions. It was very lively. At this moment, a transparent barrier suddenly rose from the high platform. Through the barrier, everyone could see what was going on inside. However, they could not hear what was being said inside. Obviously, this cooperation was not made public. Seeing this, no one was unhappy. This was normal. After all, they did not know what the cooperation would be like. It would not be too late to announce it after everything was confirmed. Now, Elder Mia and the two divine envoys have entered the stage. They will begin the discussion soon. Let's wait for the good news. As Ning Fengji's voice fell, the discussions in the square became much quieter. Most of them were waiting quietly for the Great Xia Empire and the divine envoys to come up with an excellent cooperation. After all, at this moment, the Great Xia Empire represented the entire Douluo continent. Under such circumstances, negotiating with the realm of the gods was equivalent to negotiating with the realm of the gods. They were bound together for good or ill. Just as everyone outside was nervous, Thanos and Douluo had already started the discussion on the stage. Clan leader Mia, I believe Elder Lin should have told you about the general situation of this discussion in advance. After both sides greeted each other, Douluo went straight to the point. As he spoke, Douluo was also sizing up Thanos and even wanted to check him out. However, Thanos was too mysterious. There was no fluctuation of energy on his body. When Douluo used his mental strength to sense him, it was as though he was air, very strong. This was Douluo's evaluation of Thanos. This was because Douluo had only sensed such a situation in the realm of the gods when he faced experts who were level 2 gods and above. Thanos in the lower realm was obviously not that strong. There was only one possibility for such a situation. That was, Thanos' control of energy was very strong. Just as Douluo was shocked, Thanos nodded and said, I heard that the realm of the gods wants to cooperate with me and enter the alternate world. That's right, this is it. Douluo smiled and nodded. Then he quickly said to Bai Shui, take it out. The sea god and the rest must be waiting anxiously. Bai Shui nodded. Then she waved her hand, and a light blue stone appeared in her hand. There was some smoke coming from the stone, and it looked very special. Douluo explained, this is the world crossing stone. It has the ability to travel between worlds. If there are a lot of them, they can be used to build a teleportation door and allow people to travel between worlds. This small piece can't allow us to teleport. However, it can be used as a base to allow the two worlds to communicate for a short period of time. Douluo only mentioned the use of the world crossing stone, but did not mention how precious it was. This thing was very rare and could only be created in the chaos. There were not many of them in the entire realm of the gods. The realm of the gods committee's divine mirror was made using the world crossing stone. Previously, it was only used to spy on the lower realm. If there was enough divine power, it could even be used to teleport to any world. Bai Shui took out the world crossing stone and placed it on the table. Douluo raised his hand, and a burst of divine power flew out and entered the world crossing stone. In the next second, the smoke on the world crossing stone rose and gradually condensed into a ball. It started to shine with blue light in midair. Thanos could sense that there was a very strong spatial energy fluctuation within it. It seemed to be connecting to a spatial node somewhere. If he guessed correctly, it should be connecting to the realm of the gods. At the same time, in the realm of the gods, Poseidon and Lai Yin had been waiting quietly in the sea god palace. It would not be long before Douluo activated the world crossing stone. Just as they were having this thought, they sensed a spatial fluctuation. Without hesitation, Poseidon immediately received the fluctuation. In the next second, something like a screen appeared in front of them. Smoke surrounded them, and in the center, there was a circle of blue light. Soon, the blue light faded, and a person wearing a white mask and sitting in front of a table appeared in the circle of light. At the same time, on the high platform in the square in front of the Great Xia Palace, a very simple hall appeared in front of Thanos. Especially in the middle of the hall, there were two people standing. Good heavens, a video call. This was Lin Feng's first thought. The second was, this world-crossing stone is so strong. It can actually connect to the realm of the gods. I have to think of a way to get one. With this thing, even if he ascended to the realm of the gods, he would be able to communicate with the people on the Douluo continent at any time. Most importantly, Douluo also said that if there were enough of this world-crossing stone, one could travel between different worlds. Just as Lin Feng was thinking about this, Poseidon and Lai Yin were also sizing up Thanos. However, because they only met through a small piece of the world-crossing stone, they could not investigate in detail. Otherwise, the two of them would definitely study Thanos properly. What was the reason for this guy to be able to do something that broke the rules? These two, one is the sea god Poseidon, and the other is one of the 5 divine kings of our realm of the gods, the god of kindness, Lai Yin. At this moment, Bai Shui's introduction sounded. This startled Lin Feng slightly, and he felt a little nervous. He knew that if the realm of the gods wanted to cooperate with him, the person who came to talk should not have a low status. However, he did not expect him to be a divine king. This was one of the strongest people in the realm of the gods. He was actually discussing cooperation with him. This made him nervous. Even if the person on the platform was not Lin Feng's main body, but his avatar, he was still nervous. Thanos greets the sea god and divine king. Lin Feng stood up and said with cupped hands. That voice did not have the slightest bit of excitement or humility. Instead, it was very calm. After all, these two were still in the realm of the gods. They could not use the world-crossing stone to attack him. Why was he panicking? Ha! In the realm of the gods, your name, Thanos, is very famous. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. Now that I've seen it, it's really shocking. Poseidon directly said such a sentence, which made Thanos a little confused. What was going on? How did his name, Thanos, spread throughout the realm of the gods? He did not know about these things at all. Douluo explained at the side. Clan leader Mia, you broke the rules in the world of Douluo. You have not become a god, but you have the strength of a god. This has never happened before. The entire realm of the gods was shocked. These words were not confidential. Since the realm of the gods had spread it, Thanos would know when he ascended in the future. Hence, Douluo said in advance. Thanos. At this moment, Lin Feng's heart was full of curses. There was actually such a thing. The system allowed his soul ring to break through to the million-year level. He actually broke the rules directly. This was too strong. Chapter 549. Lin Feng had guessed the rules of Douluo's world before. After all, he had tried to enter outer space, but he was blocked by an invisible barrier. That must be the rules of this world. Other than that, there were some fundamental rules. For example, one needed to obtain a soul ring to break through. One could obtain a soul skill after absorbing a soul ring. One could increase one's soul power rank by absorbing soul power, and so on. These were the rules of Douluo's world, and Lin Feng was very clear about them. The power of the rules made Lin Feng feel helpless because he couldn't break these rules at all, especially the one that needed to obtain a soul ring to break through. This was the fundamental rule of the world. If it was broken, the world might be damaged. Therefore, even the system couldn't prevent Lin Feng from absorbing soul rings to increase his rank. But now, he heard from Douluo that he had broken the rules, and it seemed that he was the first person to do so since the establishment of the God Realm. This made Lin Feng realize that the system was much more powerful than he had imagined, and it was much stronger. The reason why he couldn't increase his rank without absorbing soul rings was probably because the system was afraid of destroying this world. However, Lin Feng could store a large amount of experience points, which was another way of breaking the rules. After all, when a soul master reached a bottleneck, although they could continue to cultivate, they didn't know how much soul power they had. Lin Feng could turn into data. This ability was too strong. These thoughts flashed through Lin Feng's mind in an instant. Soon, his avatar Thanos said, "You think too highly of me. I'm just more hard-working in cultivation." "I don't think so." Although he was shocked, Lin Feng knew that the sea god and the others definitely didn't know that he had the system. Therefore, in a situation where the information was not equal, he needed to hide himself and get more information from them. Hearing this, the sea god smiled and said, "That's true. You haven't reached rank 100 yet, so you don't know much about the power of the rules. Let me explain it to you. There are many ways to discuss cooperation. One could go straight to the point, strike from the side, or talk tirelessly. The sea god had obviously chosen the most gentle option. He would first have a good chat with Thanos to get closer to him. He would talk about proper business when their relationship got closer. Just like that, Poseidon explained the rules to Thanos. The so-called power of laws is a kind of origin power of the world, a kind of law. All worlds, as well as space and time within them, are formed by strands of laws. When you reach rank 100, the soul power in your body will transform into divine power. At that time, you'll be able to sense the existence of the laws, learn them, and utilize them. And there are many types of laws, some strong and some weak. What you can comprehend is also different. Take me, for example. As the sea god, I have an extremely clear understanding of the laws of the sea. In the entire god realm, no one understands the sea better than I do. Hearing these words, Thanos nodded inwardly. So this was the law. No wonder divine power and soul power were completely different. At this moment, although Poseidon did not explain the laws to her in detail, Thanos had a clear understanding of the laws based on her own understanding. However, those were just guesses. He still did not know the specific situation and needed to ask again. Thinking about it, Thanos said, "How many types of laws are there? Can each god only learn one?" He remembered that the gods in the god realm all had deity positions, and the names of the gods were also related to the deity positions, so Lin Feng was a little puzzled. Could the gods with the corresponding deity positions only master that one law? The laws are as numerous as the stars. There are countless types, and there is no fixed number. They are changing all the time. Perhaps they are new. Perhaps they are annihilated. This time, the one who answered Lin Feng was not the sea god but Lai Yin. After listening to Lai Yin's description of the laws, Lin Feng felt that his horizons had been broadened. He thought that the laws were fixed, such as the 3,000 Great Tao. He did not expect them to be as uncertain as chaos. Moreover, Lai Yin also said that the laws might produce new ones. This meant a new life. If Lin Feng wanted to condense a new deity position, there should not be too much resistance. This was good news for Lin Feng. Just as he was thinking about this, the sea god added, "There are no strict restrictions on the learning of laws. Everyone can learn different laws. It just depends on whether your comprehension is deep enough. In addition to the sea, I also dabble in the water laws. In addition, I also dabble in wind, earth, wood, and so on. I even dabble in fire, but I don't understand much." It seemed that after becoming a god, there were no restrictions on the learning of laws. It all depended on one's own comprehension. However, Lin Feng could tell from the sea god's words that there should be a conflict between the laws. For example, the sea god himself must have a deeper understanding of the water laws. Therefore, he did not know much about the fire laws, or it was more difficult for him to learn them. Of course, these were only Lin Feng's guesses. Perhaps it was not what he thought at all. Poseidon simply did not spend too much time on the fire laws. Lin Feng did not ask such questions because there was no need. When he became a god in the future, he would know by trying. Then, Lin Feng asked his last question. "Then, sea god, what is the deity position? Is it also a kind of law?" At present, Lin Feng's understanding of the deity position was extremely limited. He only knew that the deity position was related to the power of faith. Other than that, he knew too little about the deity position. Therefore, at this moment, he was eager to know what the deity position was. Hearing this, Poseidon laughed. "If it's the deity position, you can say that it is a law. However, it is not a law. It is something higher than a law. It is a link between a god and the lower realm. It is also a link between a god and a law. Through the deity position, you can better learn the laws. At the same time, you can communicate with the lower realm and strengthen yourself. Other than that, the deity position also has a great effect on one's strength. The difference between a god with a deity position and a high priest without a deity position is too great. If a high priest wants to strengthen his understanding of a law, he can only do so through his own cultivation and comprehension. However, a god has a deity position. Therefore, the deity position is extremely important to a god. Fortunately, the atmosphere in the divine realm was extremely friendly. It was like a utopian world. All knowledge about the gods was selflessly shared in the divine realm. It was also because of this that Poseidon was willing to tell Thanos such things so casually. Of course, this also had to do with the fact that Thanos was a quasi-god and was about to enter the divine realm. At this time, telling him these things was like teaching him knowledge in advance. So this is the deity position. Thank you for telling me. Thanos thanked Poseidon sincerely. Perhaps he would be able to easily find out about these things after entering the divine realm. However, at this time, on the continent of Douluo, he could only find out from these two people. At the same time, this knowledge was very useful to Linfeng. After all, he knew nothing about the deity position. Now that he knew so much, it would definitely be very useful when he formed the deity position later. After knowing the use of the deity position, Lin Feng's desire to form the deity position became even stronger. The deity position was too important. It represented the strength of a god. Moreover, the stronger the deity position was, the more powerful the god would be in the future. As long as the deity position was formed well, he could ascend and continue to improve after reaching the divine realm. However, if he could make it better in the lower realm, it would obviously be a better choice. After all, he was not very clear about the situation in the divine realm. The wisest decision would be to increase his strength to the strongest in the lower realm. You will naturally know about this when you reach the divine realm. You don't have to thank me, Poseidon said with a smile. Thanos was so polite. This meant that if they were to discuss cooperation, it should be very smooth. While the two sides were discussing on the high platform, countless people outside were waiting quietly. Ning, Fengji, and Tang Sen explained the situation on the stage. Everyone listened quietly. Next to the high platform, there was a small room dedicated to broadcasting. At this time, the broadcaster was broadcasting with great emotion. Through the emotional voice, the situation in the square was transmitted to every corner of the continent. The Divine Realm Messenger used a divine skill to summon a passage to another world. Our Elder Mia is talking to the people inside through the passage. Through Alliance Master Ning and Alliance Master Tang's explanation, we know that there are two gods who are talking to Elder Mia. They are Poseidon, the sea god, and Lai Yin, the divine king. That's a divine king. He's actually discussing cooperation with Elder Mia. It's obvious that the divine realm values our great Xia Empire. Also, at this moment, Heaven Do City, Seven Treasures Glaze Sect, Tang Sect, Sea God's Island, Star Luo Royal Family, Clear Sky Sect, and countless other forces were looking forward to it. Among the powerhouses of these forces, there were some who came to Great Xia City to watch the ceremony. However, the sect still had to be guarded by powerhouses. Other than that, there were many low-level soul masters who would not come. At this time, they were all listening to the broadcast and paying attention to this matter. Even ordinary people would find a way to find a radio to listen to this matter. At this time, in the continent's cities, the most lively places were not the Great Soul Arena, but the taverns and tea houses that had bought radios. It was overcrowded, and just looking at it gave people a visual impact. However, in sharp contrast, these places were incomparably quiet. Anyone who made the slightest noise would be beaten up by the people nearby. After all, the radio was only so loud. If you spoke, others would not be able to hear you. Therefore, everyone unanimously controlled their voices. Even their breathing was deliberately slowed down. From this, it could be seen how much attention everyone was paying to this matter. Even the slightest movement in the broadcast could affect the hearts of everyone on the continent. In particular, the words about Thanos' actions made everyone hold their breaths and pay attention. After all, at this moment, Thanos represented the entire Douluo continent. Slowly, perhaps because countless people had a great deal of attention to Thanos' overlord and poured special feelings into him, there was an inexplicable power that began to slowly generate. This power was very weak. Wisps of it floated out from the hearts of some people who were paying attention to this matter. They traveled thousands of miles and arrived in Great Xia City's Lin Feng's body. Because it was too weak and there weren't many people, Lin Feng didn't even feel it first. But as time passed, slowly, Lin Feng felt that special power. It was very strange and warm, making Lin Feng feel as if his spirit was sublimating. However, this feeling was very similar to his cultivation anytime and anywhere. So Lin Feng didn't pay attention to it and just treated it as normal cultivation. In fact, it was also because this power was too weak. It couldn't even compare to the increase in soul power brought by Lin Feng's 1-second cultivation, so he didn't notice it. At this time, on the round platform, things were just as Poseidon thought. After Lin Feng asked the questions he wanted to know, of course, he wanted to talk about the other world. He was also very curious about this. Thinking about it, he directly asked, I wonder what's going on in this other world that we are cooperating with? How do I communicate? Or rather, how do I enter? They finally got to the main topic, Poseidon thought. After that, he said, Thanos, your body is very special. You have the aura of the other world. What you need to do now is to quickly improve yourself and ascend to the God realm. Then, we can enter the other world through you. Whether or not Thanos knew that he came from the other world, Poseidon didn't point it out. After all, what they needed to do now was to calm Thanos down and negotiate with him so that he could ascend to the God realm as soon as possible. It wouldn't be too late to talk about this when Thanos reached the God realm. After all, the God realm was their territory. Once Thanos arrived, the initiative would be in their hands. When Thanos heard this, although he looked calm on the surface, he was already in a perilous situation. After all, he was a transmigrator. This was his biggest secret. How could he not be shocked when it was revealed? Although Poseidon was a little reserved, he guessed that Poseidon must know something. Thinking of this, Lin Feng became more alert. However, he was now in Douluo's world, and Poseidon was in the God realm. The two were so far apart, and Poseidon hadn't realized that Thanos was just a clone. Therefore, Lin Feng wasn't too worried. He quickly calmed down and analyzed the situation, thinking about Poseidon's intentions. At the same time, he asked, I have the aura of the other world on me? What's the reason? I've never left Douluo's world. After all, Poseidon didn't explicitly say that he came from the other world. Therefore, Lin Feng had to cover it up verbally. If Poseidon and the others didn't know much, Lin Feng's words would be enough to dispel their thoughts. Chapter 550. Lin Feng pretended that he did not know what was going on so that he could test the sea god and the others. Hearing this, Poseidon's eyes flashed and he smiled. This is a sign that the laws are in chaos. You've transcended a part of the laws in Douluo's world. That's why this is happening. The other world's aura is too obscure. You haven't reached God level yet, so you can't detect it. Poseidon had just come up with this excuse. However, he was not just spouting nonsense. He had come prepared. Before this, Poseidon had gone to learn about this. Although what he said now was just something he made up, it was very reasonable. Too obscure? Thanos asked by Douluo. God Ambassador by Douluo, can you sense the other world's aura? Or can you show it to me? At this moment, Lin Feng only believed half of Poseidon's words. After all, he felt that Poseidon should know something. Under such circumstances, they should only tell him half of the truth. In order to understand the situation more accurately, he asked by Douluo this question. At the same time, Lin Feng began to scan himself to see if there was really the other world's aura. At this moment, Lin Feng's spiritual power and soul power invaded his body. They took root in the deepest parts of his body and searched. He sank into a half-meditative state. I don't know much about this, so I can't show it to you. Bai Luo shook his head. Regarding Thanos' sudden question, Bai Luo was a little confused. After all, his mission had ended and he was not mentally prepared. He could only shake his head to show that he did not know. At this moment, Poseidon smiled. God Ambassadors by Luo and by Shui are not familiar with the spatial laws, so they don't know. The Flame God King, and I don't know much about this either. Only after you come to the God realm can the spatial god help you find out. So that's how it is. On the surface, Slayer Overlord nodded in agreement. However, in reality, Lin Feng was very shocked. This was because when he was doing a comprehensive check on his body, he actually found an extremely obscure power. At first, he thought that it was the soul power that was produced during his cultivation. However, as time passed, he realized that this was not the case. Although the soul force he cultivated also needed to absorb energy from the outside world, in the end, the soul force still came from the inside out and was produced in his own body. However, this power was flowing in from the outside. Most importantly, this power seemed to be endless and spread from all parts of the continent. Although they were very small, strands by strands, when they were gathered together, they were still countless strands. It was still very impressive. Also, Lin Feng realized that the power was still increasing. It made him feel warm and special. Lin Feng was sure that he didn't have this kind of energy in his body before. However, now, at first, it was Otherworld's aura. However, Lin Feng found that there were no spatial fluctuations at all. There was also no strange feeling. Instead, it was very attractive. Most importantly, this energy came from all directions. It was impossible that the Otherworld had already enveloped the Douluo continent, right? Therefore, Lin Feng was very sure that this was definitely not Otherworld's aura. However, what was this? If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Feng didn't sense any danger from it, he would have expelled it from his body long ago. However, he didn't have the slightest understanding of this energy. This made Lin Feng shocked and confused. How should he deal with this energy? In his heart, Lin Feng wanted to expel this unknown thing. After all, it suddenly appeared without any warning. This was too scary. However, deep in his heart, he could feel that this energy was not harmful to him at all. It could even strengthen his soul power. Just as Lin Feng was hesitating, the system prompt sounded. Ding! It has been detected that the host is being infused with the power of faith. Do you want to convert it into faith points? Yes/no. The moment he heard this system prompt, Lin Feng was stunned. What? This is the power of faith? To be honest, Lin Feng never expected that the power of faith would appear like this. He hasn't even started to use his power yet. The deification plan hasn't officially started yet, and the power of faith has already appeared. If it weren't for the system prompt, Lin Feng really wouldn't have realized that this was the power of faith. After all, it was too sudden and he was not prepared at all. Yes. In his heart, Lin Feng chose yes. Ding! The power of faith has been successfully converted. Current faith points. 1. In addition to being shocked, Lin Feng was also very curious. What is this new faith points? From the name alone, this should be the system digitizing the power of faith, but he didn't know what the specific use of the faith points was. Thinking about it, Lin Feng immediately looked at his system panel. Name: Lin Feng Martial Soul. 1000 Trick Ruler, Immeasurable Flower Soul Power. Rank 90,000 Trick Ruler Soul Ring. Special Soul Skill. Avatar Blood Shadow Shark King 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Spatial Shatter God Bestowed Soul Ring 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Sharpness God Bestowed Soul Ring 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Paralysis God Bestowed Soul Ring 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Life Absorption Deep Sea Devil Whale King 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Deep Sea. Domain Immeasurable Flower Soul Ring. Snow Lotus 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Life Balloon Ghost Head Predatory Spider 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Shadow Bind Armored Giant Bear 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Armored Demonic Bear Transformation Raging Flame Devil Monkey 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Raging Sea of Flames Nether Civet 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Nether Body Lightning Falcon 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Thunderbolt Strength Wind Dragon 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill. Martial Soul True Body Chinquin Blood Shadow Beast 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill 1. Teleportation Soul Skill 2. Avatar Swap Soul Bone. Wind Dragon Left Leg Bone 1,000,000 years, plus Soul Skill 1. Hatha, Soul Skill 2. Wind Invisibility Chinquin Blood Shadow Beast Skull, 1,000,000 years, plus, Soul Skill 1. Spatial Imprisonment, Soul Skill 2. Blood Fiend Blood Shadow Shark King Right Leg Bone, 1,543 years, plus, Soul Skill 1. Spatial Travel, Soul Skill 2. Berserk Sharp Claw Demon Ape Left Arm Bone, 1,000,000 years, plus, Soul Skill 1. Space Rending Slash, Soul Skill 2. Ape Howl Deep Sea Devil Whale King Torso Bone, 1,000,000 years, plus, Soul Skill 1. Sea's Breath, Soul Skill 2. Fury of the Sea Experience, 94341726778 Faith. When his experience was about to reach 10 billion, which meant that Lin Feng would be able to get another 1,000,000-year soul ring. However, that wasn't the most important thing right now. Instead, it was the last item, the extra faith. Lin Feng clicked on it, and a message popped up, which Lin Feng received. In the next second, he cursed in his heart. There was no other reason, but the faith was really too strong. At present, it only had 2 functions, and the rest could only be unlocked after Lin Feng reached level 100. But even so, these 2 functions shocked Lin Feng, because the first one was that the faith could be converted into experience, and the ratio was an astonishing 1 to 1,000,000. 1 faith was equivalent to 1,000,000 experience. This was too amazing. Lin Feng estimated that this faith began to condense not long after he started the negotiation. It had only been a few minutes, and there was already a little faith. At this rate, it was estimated to be hundreds of millions a day. And most importantly, there weren't many people who were contributing faith to him at present. After all, he hadn't officially started to use his power yet. These people who believed in him all came spontaneously, probably because he was negotiating with the divine realm. At this moment, he represented the Douluo continent, so he was regarded as the center of sympathy by the people of the continent. Quantitative change led to qualitative change, and finally the faith was condensed. Lin Feng knew that this faith was not reliable. Perhaps after this negotiation, they would no longer believe in him, and the faith would be cut off. However, because of this incident, the seed of faith had been planted. As long as Lin Feng worked hard on the Douluo continent, the seed would bloom and bear fruit one day. And from that moment onwards, Lin Feng's faith would increase rapidly. 10 billion experience a day maybe would no longer be a dream. After figuring this out, Lin Feng placed more importance on the power of faith. This was something that would determine whether he could quickly upgrade all his soul rings to the 1,000,000-year level. In addition to the function of converting faith into experience, faith had another use, and that was to condense a god position. It wasn't something that Lin Feng felt could be condensed, but it was actually condensed. The system clearly said that after he reached level 100, he could consume faith to condense a god position. The strength of a god position depended on the consumption of faith. The more faith was consumed, the stronger the god position. If the consumption was low, the god position wouldn't be that strong. So now, Lin Feng needed to save up a lot of faith before he reached level 100. Patriarch Slay? At this moment, Douluo called out tentatively. Faith was too much for Lin Feng, and at this crucial moment of the negotiation, Lin Feng was a little distracted. Yes, Thanos immediately came back to his senses and nodded. I was just thinking about what I should do next. Hearing this, Poseidon immediately smiled. Very simple. We will give you divine power to help you cultivate quickly, and then break through to level 100. Once you reach level 100, you will immediately ascend to the divine realm. Then, we will use the otherworld aura in your body to open a passage to the otherworld. This was what Douluo had told Lin Feng before. Now, Poseidon repeated it again, but soon he added, giving you divine power to help you break through quickly is the basis of our cooperation. As a reward, as long as we can successfully open a passage to the otherworld, you will have the right to go to that otherworld at any time. At the same time, you will also receive a divine artifact. Douluo had told Poseidon that Thanos would ask for something, so now he told him the benefits in advance. As for the divine artifact, Poseidon did not specify it very specifically. This was to leave himself some leeway. After all, there were good and bad divine artifacts. At this time, if he said that the otherworld did not exist, or that the otherworld was extremely old, he would lose the divine artifact. On the other hand, if he said that the divine artifact was too bad and the otherworld was extremely good, it would not be appropriate for him to change his words. So now, he only said that the divine artifact was a reward. Hearing this, the siblings by Luo and by Shui were envious. These two rewards were both extremely generous. Needless to say, the divine artifact was something that could directly strengthen a god's power. Moreover, some divine artifacts could help in the understanding of rules. If one was talented enough, after thousands of years of cultivation, one could even condense a god position out of thin air. And the right to go to the other world at any time was even more precious. This was because in the realm of the gods, very few gods could descend. After cooperating with Thanos, he had the right to go to the other world at any time. This was the treatment of a god king. The two of them were very envious. At this point, Thanos' overlord saw it in his eyes. It seemed that Poseidon had listened to his original words. He actually gave a bargaining chip that made by Luo so envious. Lin Feng was also quite satisfied with this. He could go to the other world at any time, which meant that the resources of the entire other world were almost all his. Let's not talk about the materials for now. The main thing was the population. If it was an other world with a large population, it meant that there would be another group of people who believed in him. After all, it was a whole new world. The gods in the realm of the gods had probably not been there before. Otherwise, they would not have cooperated with him. Under such circumstances, the people in that world would definitely have no religion. This was extremely good news for Lin Feng. But all of this was based on the fact that he had a good cooperation with the realm of the gods. If all of this was just an illusion, he could only think about it. Therefore, Lin Feng shouldn't have too much hope for this. He should just treat it as he normally would. Thinking of this, Lin Feng asked, "This divine power, if I absorb it, can I obtain a god position?" Lin Feng had actually intercepted a lot of sea gods' divine power. He could feel that this divine power had a special power. When the time came, with the help of this divine power, it should be helpful in condensing a god position. But now, if the realm of the gods gave him another reward, could he condense a god position with this divine power? This was a problem. Without hesitation, Poseidon immediately said, "The god positions in the realm of the gods are limited. Unless you inherit someone else's god position, it would be extremely difficult to condense one yourself. So, if you only absorb soul power, it would be very difficult to condense a god position." Although he did not think that Thanos could condense a god position, he still added, "Actually, the condensing of a god position is related to each person's talent. If your talent is extremely heaven-defying, you might be able to condense a god position." Thanos was the first person in history to surpass the rules. Moreover, Lin Feng and Tang San, who were closely related to him, were also extremely heaven-defying. In this case, Poseidon also had a glimmer of hope for Thanos. Chapter 551. After listening to Poseidon's words, Lin Feng knew that the deity position had a lot to do with one's aptitude. As long as one's aptitude was good, one could condense a deity position, just like how Poseidon condensed the sea god's deity position. However, there should be different types of god power. Some god power could promote the condensing of a deity position, such as the sea god's god power. Others couldn't, such as the sea god's god power that he wanted to give him. Lin Feng guessed that this god power should be the kind that could be found everywhere in the god realm. It was very ordinary, but it was enough to allow people in the lower realm to quickly increase their strength and ascend to the god realm. From Poseidon's words, Lin Feng knew that there should be a limit to the deity position in the god realm. Now that he had reached a critical point, if he wanted to condense a deity position, it would be very difficult. However, Lin Feng had the system, and his faith points would allow him to condense a deity position successfully. He guessed that the deity position condensed by the system should be able to transcend the rules of the God realm, just like when he directly obtained the million-year soul ring. Therefore, Lin Feng had no worries about the deity position now. As for Tang San and the others, Lin Feng wasn't very worried. As the saying went, everything could be studied. Lin Feng had already studied soul power. After he condensed the deity position, he would also put the study of the deity position and God power on the agenda. Under such circumstances, it wouldn't be long before Tang San and the others could condense a deity position with his help. This way, when he reached the God realm, he would have his own team. No matter what he did, it would be much easier. So it's so difficult to condense a deity position. However, I will still try. Thanos smiled and nodded. In fact, Lin Feng's previous words were not only to test the alternate world, but also to test whether the people of the God realm knew about his system. Now it seemed that they didn't know about the system. This made Lin Feng feel much more relaxed. In addition, Bai Luo, Bai Shui, and the others couldn't even see through his avatar. Lin Feng was even more relaxed. In his heart, Lin Feng originally thought that the gods of the God realm were ridiculously strong. From the looks of it now, although it was still very strong, it was much weaker than expected. Of course, the main reason for this was that Lin Feng himself was too strong, which was why such a situation had occurred. Very good. Young people are very motivated. I look forward to your success. Poseidon chuckled. Because Tang San and Lin Feng had received the inheritance of Poseidon, Poseidon had a good impression of Thanos, who was close to them. At this point, the discussion could be considered a success. Not only did they come to an agreement, but they also had a pleasant conversation. They even imparted some knowledge of the God realm to Thanos, expressing a sense of closeness. He believed that when Thanos really ascended to the God realm, he would have a good impression of the God realm. Thinking of this, Poseidon's godly power vibrated. He waved his hand and threw a small blue bottle into the light screen in front of him. Although this small world-crossing stone could not allow living creatures to pass through, with the support of godly power, it was still possible to send some small items over. As the light screen in front of him rippled, the small blue bottle appeared on the table in front of Thanos. At the same time, Poseidon smiled and said, "This contains enough godly power to raise 10 people to level 100. I believe that it won't be long before we meet in the God realm." After saying this, he had said all that needed to be said. There was nothing else to say. Poseidon did not waste any more words. With a wave of his hand, he cut off the godly power connection. The light screen in front of him began to ripple slowly and soon disappeared. From beginning to end, Lion did not say much. This was because there was no need for her to say anything. Poseidon alone was enough. Moreover, he was a god king. If he spoke too much, it would be beneath him. When the light screen dissipated and the world-crossing stone was taken away by Bai Luo, Thanos picked up the small blue bottle on the table with interest. He opened the bottle cap and tried to sense it. He found that there was a huge amount of energy inside. It was the kind that was completely beyond his imagination. There was too much of it. Most importantly, such a huge amount of energy was imprisoned in this small bottle. The technical principle behind it made Lin Feng gasp in amazement. At this time, the broadcaster in the outside world also spoke with great emotion. Lord Sea God of the God realm and Elder Mia have a very harmonious discussion. Both sides are having a pleasant conversation. We can see that the light screen is rippling. A small bottle flew out from it. Although we don't know what's in the bottle, we can see from the expression of the god emissary that it should be a treasure. Elder Mia, as the broadcast continued to broadcast, the hearts of countless people swayed along with it. They were worried. They were worried that something would happen to the cooperation in the God realm. They were also looking forward to the good results of this cooperation. Under such circumstances, countless people sympathized with the identity of Thanos. The power of faith slowly flowed toward Lin Feng. This also let Lin Feng know that the identity of Thanos would also bring him the power of faith. The situation that he was worried about would not happen at all. This was good news for Lin Feng. It meant that his real body strength could be completely hidden. If he encountered any great danger in the future, his safety would be guaranteed. After all, the first to die would most likely be his avatar. Of course, this was only Lin Feng's last layer of insurance. Under normal circumstances, regardless of whether it was his avatar or his real body, he would not put himself in a dangerous situation. Just as Lin Feng was sensing the power of faith, Xiao Wu, who was next to him, asked curiously, "Feng Ge, do you know what the bottle in Mr. Destroy's hand is?" "How would I know? Do you think I'm a god?" Lin Feng said with a smile. "The cooperation discussion should be almost done. When Mr. Destroy comes out, I'll go and ask." "Oh, okay." Xiao Wu nodded. On the high platform, Thanos was observing the little blue bottle in his hand. At this moment, Bai Shui thought that Thanos did not understand these things. She explained to him, "This is a god's power bottle. It is specially used to store God's power. It is supported by the power of laws. That's why it can store so much God's power." "Is this the power of laws?" "It is indeed magical." Thanos nodded. At the very least, Lin Feng understood the principles behind soul tool technology. It used special patterns to guide the flow of soul power and generate energy from it. However, Lin Feng was confused about the power of laws. He could not learn it at all. It seemed that he was still not at rank 100. He believed that when he reached rank 100, he would be able to understand the mystery. Bai Luo clasped his hands at Lin Feng and said, "Clan Leader Destroy, since the cooperation has been concluded, I wish you the best of luck in ascending to the God Realm." It would not be long before Thanos ascended to the God Realm and became a heavenly official. Therefore, Bai Luo treated him as an equal. Because of the cooperation, Thanos' status was even higher than Bai Luo's. Bai Xuan nodded and said, "We will wait for you in the God Realm. See you later." Bai Luo clasped his hands and left with Bai Shui. They had completed their mission. There was no reason for them to stay in Douluo's world any longer. They had to return to the God Realm. Thanos did not ask them to stay. He only watched them leave in silence. If it were before, he would find a way to make them stay and find an opportunity to spar with them to increase his experience points. However, there was no need to do so now, because he had faith points. 1 point of faith could be exchanged for 1 million experience points. In just a few minutes, he had accumulated 13 points. Wasn't it much faster than sparring with others? This was under the circumstance that there were not many people who believed in him. Moreover, the power of faith was not stable. It was sometimes high and sometimes low. When Lin Feng's deification plan was officially implemented, it would not be long before his faith point skyrocketed. Thinking of this, Thanos did not leave immediately. Instead, he slowly flew into the sky and came to the side of Tang San and Ning Fengji. Previously, when Tang San and Ning Fengji were hosting, their voices were transmitted through the loudspeakers around the square. However, Thanos did not need to do so. He directly used his soul power to transmit his voice to the entire square. Today, the negotiation between the God Realm and the Great Xia Empire has ended perfectly. The cooperation has gone smoothly. In order to celebrate this grand occasion, all members of the Great Xia Alliance can go to the various alliance branches in the continent to receive 100 contribution points within 3 days. Even Soul Masters who have not joined yet can receive this congratulatory gift after joining. 100 contribution points was nothing to a powerhouse. They could easily earn that much just by completing a mission. But for those who were only Soul Elders, Soul Ancestors, or even Soul Grandmasters, 100 points was equivalent to several months or even a year's worth of income. Therefore, when Thanos' announcement was broadcasted, all the Soul Masters in the continent cheered and were abnormally excited. Tang San and the others could meet. In the following days, all the Soul Masters who had not joined the Great Xia Alliance would fight to join, especially those who were weak. Not for anything else, but just the 100 contribution points were enough to make them excited. At this moment, Thanos continued. In addition to the 100 contribution points, in the following month, all Soul Masters who complete official missions will receive a 50% increase in rewards. If the previous 100 contribution points were a great benefit for low-level Soul Masters, then this 50% increase in rewards was a blessing for high-level Soul Masters. Although it was only an official mission, the rewards for official missions were already very high. Now that the rewards were increased by 50%, the rewards would be too terrifying. In the following month, it would be very difficult for anyone to snatch any official mission. In fact, if Thanos' words were carried out and the Alliance did not do anything, the contribution points would depreciate very quickly. After all, the Alliance's membership would increase greatly in the near future. In addition to the 100 contribution points given out to everyone, the market would be flooded with contribution points in a short period of time. Under such circumstances, the depreciation of contribution points or inflation was inevitable. Lin Feng had already predicted this and had a way to deal with it. It was very simple. On one hand, he had to control the number of official missions. At the same time, the soul tools displayed in the laboratory would be released into the market. As the contribution points increased, the number of goods would also increase. As long as he controlled the relationship, the contribution points would not depreciate. Strictly speaking, the reason why Lin Feng wanted to distribute contribution points to all the soul masters on the continent was to promote everyone's consumption. Otherwise, wouldn't it be awkward if those soul tools couldn't be sold after they were released into the market? By distributing contribution points now, it could promote the consumption cycle. This way, the ecosystem of contribution points will be healthier. Congratulations to the Alliance. Congratulations to the Alliance. Congratulations to the Alliance. Thanos' words were too exciting. Everyone in the plaza was cheering. Then, Thanos Overlord said a few more words to motivate everyone and then left. He did not mention the details of the cooperation. Everyone had expected this because they had been informed in advance. However, this was not important now. Thanos had already said that the negotiations were very smooth and the cooperation was perfect. In addition to the large amount of contribution points given out, everyone's attention was diverted. At this moment, Lin Feng also realized that the rate at which the power of faith was being gathered was decreasing. After all, these people did not really believe in him. They only had faith in him because of special circumstances. Now that the special circumstances were decreasing, the power of faith naturally decreased. Furthermore, according to the rate at which it was decreasing, he estimated that he would not receive any more power of faith in half an hour at most. However, Lin Feng did not panic at all. He had already guessed this. Tomorrow, he would officially start the apotheosis plan. At most, in a month, he should be able to start gathering believers. Thinking about this, Lin Feng was still very much looking forward to it. At this moment, in the plaza, with Ning, Fengji, and Tang San's additional explanation, everyone was extremely enthusiastic and cheering for the Great Xia Empire. At the same time, Bai Luo and Bai Shui came to a valley 100 miles south of the Great Xia city. They communicated with the God Realm and finally returned to the God Realm under the guidance of the Flame God King's soul power. In the following time, of course, they had to report to Flame and Poseidon. Although the discussion had been completed, the task of the two of them was not just to promote the discussion with Thanos Overlord. Other than that, they also had to evaluate the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, the detailed investigation report was handed over to Flame. All right, they also specifically investigated whether there were spatial cracks on the continent or if there had been spatial cracks in the past. However, after a few days, they did not find anything at all. Hence, the report did not find anything. While Flame and Poseidon were learning about the Great Xia Empire in the depths of the Star Do Great Forest, a group of beasts opened their eyes